Chapter 1146. This style of decoration completely stunned everyone. They had never seen such a style of decoration before. The people present were all women, and their eyes seemed to be attracted by this style of decoration. Oh, Hades' era wasn't a woman. However, this wasn't the main point. Looking at his appearance, he seemed to be more excited than those women. Although Dami Hayashi had the heart of a man, she was still very fond of pink things. At least, she didn't have much resistance towards these things that were full of girls' hearts. She was completely captivated by these decorations. Too beautiful. That transparent floor-to-ceiling window made them feel that their field of vision was suddenly broadened. Outside the door, the bustling street was full of people. On the other hand, they could sit behind a transparent wall and eat a bowl of ice-cold ice cream. Under the envious gazes of others, they could lean back in their chairs and gently exhale. It was in line with their sense of superiority, which made them feel at ease. What's this? It's so cute. Hades' era held the spicy strip in his mouth, looking at the big pile of furry doll spirits of the god of cooking set placed on the counter in the distance. Those cute dolls made Hades' era fondle them, unable to put them down. The soft touch, coupled with a warm feeling, made him unable to help but take a few more. One in each hand and one under his armpit. The other women were also attracted by Hades' era's voice. They all walked over, exclaiming in surprise as they held the plush dolls and played with them. The women seemed to have no resistance towards these furry dolls. In just a blink of an eye, they were completely captivated. Not wanting to put them down, they even pressed the dolls against their white and tender faces, gently rubbing them. Moreover, the system had specially made these dolls very cute. The pink decoration, the transparent floor-to-ceiling window, and the plush dolls, so many things were completely beyond their imagination. Hades' era, with the spicy strip in his mouth, couldn't help but suck in a breath of cold air. Oh my God, is this the old-fashioned restaurant decoration style of Bufong? How could there be such a big surprise? Hades' era was shocked. As a Hades' era who had worked in many of Bufong's restaurant branches, he couldn't believe that Bufong would actually decorate the restaurant with such a girly heart. That expressionless and unromantic Bufong? Could it be that after coming to Goddess City, Bufong's hidden maiden's heart was aroused? No matter how hard Hades' era tried to guess, he couldn't figure out why Bufong would decorate the place like this. But he had to admit, this kind of decoration was surprisingly attractive. The female King Biluo put her hands behind her back. Dressed in casual clothes, she had lost her noble and imposing aura. Instead, she looked more like a girl next door. This aura made her even more charming. Even though the women present were all beauties, they couldn't conceal her aura that people couldn't ignore. This little chef is really fast. In just 2 days, he could decorate the place like this. Seems like this little chef has planned this beforehand. He has long planned to open an ice cream shop in Goddess City. Now, I'm looking forward to it. The female King Biluo reached out her hand to grab a toy spirit. Her eyes twinkled as she pinched the fluffy toy, changing its shape continuously. The kitchen door seemed to have heard the commotion outside, and with a squeak, the kitchen door was pushed open. Everybody's attention was attracted, and they all turned to look. They saw Bufong's sleeves rolled up, and his hands were wet as he slowly walked out of the kitchen. Seeing the people present, Bufong's eyes became a little suspicious. Apparently, he didn't understand why these people were here. However, when he saw these women looking at the decoration style of Fong Fong ice cream shop, the corners of his mouth couldn't help but rise. It seemed the decoration was effective. Bufong's eyes fell on Hades' era. Looking at this guy holding a toy in each hand and another under his armpit, he suddenly became speechless. You're a man. Why are you following a group of women? Wiping the water stains on his hands, Bufong put down his sleeves and walked to the middle of the crowd. Tomorrow, Fong Fong Ice Cream Shop will open for business. Since you're here, I have something to trouble you with. Bufong's faint voice rang out. Her eyes were still locked on Chi-Si and Dami Hayashi. These two were generals, and they had a lot of resources in their hands. Oh, Owner Boo is so polite. What's the matter? I, Hades' era, am duty-bound. Of course, It would be better if owner Boo could exchange it with ice cream. Courtesy demands reciprocity. Hades' grinned, stuffing a toy in his hand into his open lapel. His free hand grabbed another plush toy. Bufong looked at him. Why don't you take another one? Even if Xiao Bai hasn't finished leveling up, I'll summon it and let you feel the fear of stripping your clothes. Bufong said. Hades' was stunned and immediately smiled awkwardly. He put the plush toy in his hand back and took out another one from his lapel, his face full of smiles. Four is enough. That's enough. The surrounding women couldn't help but roll their eyes. King Biluo couldn't help but touch her forehead. How could she have such a stupid brother? What kind of man did her mother marry? To be able to give birth to such an idiot, Bufong ignored Hades' looked at the crowd and said, Tomorrow, Fong Fong Ice Cream Shop will open for business. Everyone can go back and help promote it. As a reward for your hard work, today's ice cream, I'll treat everyone. Everyone's eyes suddenly lit up. Treat? Did that mean that they could also eat ice cream today? Not just ice cream. Today, you'll have the opportunity to taste all the dishes in Fong Fong Ice Cream Shop, Bufong said with a slight smile. As soon as he said that, the group of curious people couldn't help but ask. They all patted their chests and promised that they would go back and help promote it. In fact, with the fame of Fong Fong Ice Cream Shop, there was no need for much promotion, and many customers would come to it. When Chi-Si glanced at Bufong with a faint smile and said that Bufong had really put in a lot of effort for the nether crystals, Bufong couldn't help but be stunned. Then he sucked in a cold breath and thought a very important thing. Could the nether crystals also become the restaurant's revenue, which would help him improve his cultivation? This was a very serious matter. When Bufong asked the system, it gave him an affirmative answer. A look of joy flashed in Bufong's eyes. He didn't expect that he could really improve his cultivation base. This was good news for him. His cultivation base's improvement was quite slow, mainly because the few shops in the Hidden Dragon Continent couldn't meet his needs. The restaurant in the Heaven Chief Realm had basically stopped operating because of the crisis in the Heaven Chief Realm. The appearance of Fong Fong Ice Cream Shop gave Bufong hope. After talking to the crowd, Bufong turned around and went to the kitchen. He asked Jing Yuan to start cooking. After a while, the dishes were brought out one after another. The crystal goblets were filled with ice cream, which was overflowing with milky fragrance. The ice cream was overflowing with color. It was covered with spirit fruit juice, which made it look especially gorgeous. Due to the addition of the spirit fruit juice, the ice cream was of different colors, and it was quite eye-catching to look at. When the ice cream appeared, the crowd couldn't help but drool. However, when the other dishes were brought out, they were even more shocked. This is deep-fried spirit gold fruit. If you dip it in the sauce, the taste will be even better. Bufong brought out a plate of sparkling, fragrant dishes, then placed it on the table. On the plate, the spirit gold fruit strips were fried until they were golden. This is the flying phoenix wings. This is the sky lotus heart egg tart. This is the virgin chicken. The dishes were brought out of the kitchen, placed on the table. The thick aroma spread out, filling the entire place. The crowd was dazzled. They didn't expect that Bufong would bring out so many delicious dishes. They had thought that the so-called Fong Fong's ice cream store would only sell ice cream, but now they were shocked. However, besides ice cream, there were many other delicious dishes. The thick aroma filled the air, teasing people's taste buds. The roasted wings were red and greasy, and the golden, fragrant chicken was roasted to perfection. Almost all the people present were unable to hold themselves back. Bufong turned around and went back into the restaurant. Everyone's eyes followed Bufong's movements. Could it be that there are more dishes? The same thought emerged in everyone's mind. However, shortly after, Bufong confirmed it. This time, there wasn't a thick aroma. However, in Bufong's hand, there was a tray on which there was an exquisite crystal goblet filled with liquid. That's right, it was liquid. It should be drunk. Without the aroma of wine, it wasn't wine. Furthermore, the liquid appeared to be turbid, which made it look rather alluring. This is one of the main dishes of Fong Fong Ice Cream Shop besides ice cream. Pearl milk tea. Bufong said, Pearl milk tea? Milk tea? Everybody was bewildered. Their eyes were fixed on the drinks placed in front of them by Bu Fong, and they looked at each other in dismay. This thing could actually be the main dish of Fong Fong ice cream shop together with ice cream. Everybody wanted to have a good taste of it. Her Majesty the Empress reached out her hand, her slender fingers holding the crystal goblet, lifting it up. The goblet was exquisitely made, and the milk tea inside was silky smooth. A pink straw was placed in the goblet. King Biluo looked at Bu Fong, not saying anything. This time, she didn't eat the ice cream first. Instead, she wanted to taste the milk tea. When it entered her hand, it felt cold. Indeed, it lived up to its name as an ice cream shop. Her red lips parted, revealing her pearly white teeth. She sucked on the straw. A moment later, King Biluo's eyes widened. When the others saw the huge change in the queen's expression, they were all shocked. When the empress tasted the ice cream, her expression was similar to this. After that, the others also raised their goblets, bit on their straws, and began to sip from them. Bu Fong clasped his hands behind his back and stood in the distance. He was very satisfied with the crowd's attitude. When he learned that the nether crystals earned by Fong Fong Ice Cream Shop could be turned into his cultivation base, he was looking forward to the coming business. If he wanted to earn more nether crystals, he would need dishes that could conquer this group of people. Only when his dishes conquered this group of people would they be convinced to promote Fong Fong Ice Cream Shop and attract more customers. So, looking at the group of people eating happily, Bu Fong couldn't help but curve the corners of his mouth. After a hearty meal, cups and plates were scattered all over the place. The group of women, including Hades' era, leaned back in their chairs contentedly, their faces filled with contentment. Even King Biluo blushed, feeling quite satisfied. Whether it was milk tea, ice cream, or grilled wings, they all made her incomparably satisfied. Yu and Hades' era didn't leave. Chi-Si, Dami Hayashi, and the Empress left Fong Fong Ice Cream Shop in satisfaction. The Empress returned to the palace, preparing to let Bu Fong enter God Vanishing Mountain the next day. Chi-Si and Lin Damii, on the other hand, glanced at each other and decided to make the ice cream shop their permanent residence with their subordinates. Of course, before that, they also needed to fulfill the promise they had made to Bu Fong, to help promote the shop. As the promotion began, the new shop on the old site of Spring Breeze Pavilion, Fong Fong Ice Cream Shop, was thoroughly spread among the women. The night quietly passed. Jing Yuan, on the other hand, was eagerly learning how to make ice cream and milk tea that Bu Fong had taught her. Just like that, the third day finally arrived. The much-anticipated Fong Fong Ice Cream Shop was finally going to open. Today was also the day Bu Fong prepared to enter God Vanishing Mountain. Chapter 1147. The Fong Fong Ice Cream Shop had opened for business. This news was like a storm that had been brewing for a whole night. Although it was only a night of publicity, the entire Goddess City had already received the news. Countless people flocked to it like ducks. When people talked about the Fong Fong Ice Cream Shop, many people might not know much about it. However, when it came to ice cream, everyone in Goddess City knew about it. This gourmet dish, which had shown in the Imperial Feast, had already attracted the attention of the entire city. Actually, when it came to good food, its name was the best way to advertise it. Once it was spread by word of mouth, it would eventually become famous in the entire city. After the Imperial Feast, the officials who had eaten the ice cream had already gone crazy. They were proud that they had eaten the ice cream. When people talked about the grandeur of the Imperial Feast, they would inevitably talk about the ice cream. And now, the news that an ice cream shop was going to open in Goddess City swept across the entire city like a storm. Everyone was extremely excited, and they were looking forward to it. The old site of the Spring Breeze Pavilion had become an ice cream shop. This news was spread all over the city in just a blink of an eye. On the morning of the third day, Jing Yuan was a little tired, but she was extremely excited as she walked out of the kitchen. As soon as she reached the door, she was startled, and she sucked in a breath of cold air. She couldn't help but be shocked. The main thing was that the door had already been surrounded by a large group of people. These women kept coming to the door, and every one of them had a look of pleasant surprise in their eyes. Outside the shop, a board was hung, and on the board was the advertising slogan written by Buffon. It was a simple slogan, along with the price of the ice cream. Even without Buffon's reminder, Jing Yuan knew that this time, the main dish of the Fong Fong ice cream shop would be ice cream. At least 3/4 of the people present had come because of the fame of the ice cream. After all, it was a delicacy that could even intoxicate the empress. Who wouldn't want to try it? After opening the restaurant's door, the clamor outside almost broke Jing Yuan's eardrums. All kinds of shouts and shouts resounded unceasingly. With such a crowded crowd, Buffon couldn't help but feel a little surprised. Nethery and Nether King Air Ha took the initiative to line up and organize the crowd. In just a short while, the troops lined up neatly. One by one, figures stepped into the ice cream shop. In just an instant, screams of surprise rang out. This made the hearts of the people queuing behind it. Buffon stood in the distance. He was not in charge of today's grand opening, mainly because he did not have the time. After all, he needed to enter the God-vanishing mountain. Although he was very concerned about the first day's turnover, compared to entering the God-vanishing mountain to search for the spring of life, the latter was more important. Of course, this was also because Buffon was very confident. He was very confident in the ice cream shop. He believed that the sales on the first day would be very impressive. Looking at the long queue, Buffon clasped his hands behind his back, his gaze deep. The procession was lined up on the long street. It could be said that the entire city was bustling. It was as if all the women in Goddess City had gathered here. Among them, there were many who came to watch the fun, and of course, there were also many who came to buy. After all, to be able to personally taste the ice cream that even the Empress praised endlessly, whether it was vanity or happiness, it would be very strong. Looking at you and Hades Era, who were busy organizing the customers to line up, Buffon gently let out a breath. Right now, he did not know the sales of the Fong Fong ice cream shop. But thinking about it, it should not be too bad. Let's go. Her Majesty is still waiting for you. Behind Buffon, a figure slowly appeared, and a cold voice rang out. Qi-Si's red robe fluttered as she leaned against the wall. Her red lips were raised as she looked at Buffon. You insisted on opening this ice cream shop. Don't you have any confidence? Qi-Si looked at Buffon with interest as she asked. Buffon glanced at her and shook his head. Let's go to the Imperial Palace. I'm just curious whether the sales of the Fong Fong ice cream shop on the first day can crush Spring Breeze Pavilion. Buffon's voice was very calm, but it was filled with endless confidence. Qi-Si's red lips slightly twitched, but she did not say anything. A whistle rang out. In the next moment, in the distant sky, a red dragon spread its wings and flew over. The red dragon landed on the ground, and its nostrils seemed to be spewing out majestic hot air. Qi-Si's toes gently touched the ground, and her figure floated onto the red dragon's back. Come on up. Qi-Si glanced at Buffon and said. Buffon raised his eyebrows, glancing at the huge red dragon. The red dragon tilted its head, its eyes staring at him. Then, without saying anything, he walked straight up to Red Dragon. Qi-Si originally wanted to watch Buffon embarrass himself. She was the only one who could subdue the unruly Red Dragon. She was the only one who could subdue it. She was happy to see Buffon suffer in front of Qilong. However, she soon realized that she was wrong. The expression on his face froze, and a dull look appeared in his eyes. Because when Buffon came near, her red dragon had already disappeared. He actually squatted down attentively. He let out a low moan through his nose. How is this possible? Qi-Si's eyes narrowed. Why did Qilong become so obedient in front of this man? Buffon extended his hand and gently patted the head of the crimson dragon. His figure flashed, and the vermilion robe fluttered as he landed on the crimson dragon blanket. Both of his hands fell to his waist as he stood as straight as a javelin. The wind blew, causing the vermilion robe on Buffon's body to flutter unceasingly, emitting flapping noises. Qi-Si came back to her senses, suppressing the surprise in her heart. Then, she urged the red dragon to soar into the sky. Its flesh wings spread open, and as it flapped, a gust of wind blew. The speed of the red dragon was very fast, But this time, it did not land before the Dragon Lake. Instead, it brought Bufong over the Dragon Lake, over the gates of the Imperial Palace, and landed on the huge square in front of the palace. In front of the square was the majestic palace. The two of them flipped down the dragon's back, and one after the other, they silently stepped into the palace. The palace was very empty. Compared to the liveliness of the previous imperial feast, it seemed a little deserted. The female King Biluo sat high on the spirit gold throne. Her body reclined, and her two white legs were crossed. Seeing Bufong and Qi Si come in, her eyes slightly trembled. "You're here," the female King Biluo said faintly. Her voice was a lot colder. Qi Si respectfully folded her hands, placed them on her forehead, and bowed. The female King Biluo only faintly nodded. Her gaze rose and landed on Bufong in the distance. Bufong's hands hung down, and his red and white vermilion robe fluttered. He walked over step by step, and finally looked at the female King Biluo. "I'll ask you one last time. Are you really prepared to enter the God Vanishing Mountain? The forbidden God Vanishing Mountain. With your cultivation, you might not be able to return. Are you sure you want to go?" The female King Biluo's fiery red lips slightly opened, and she faintly said. To this, Bufong naturally did not hesitate and nodded. God Vanishing Mountain, he must go. But suddenly, Bufong's eyes shrank. He discovered that the female King Biluo on the spirit gold throne had disappeared. In the next instant, a fragrant wind surged, and the scarlet red robe fluttered. The female King Biluo's figure appeared in front of Bufong. Her figure floated, and their gazes were level as they looked at each other. "Since you've already decided, I won't stop you. Before entering the God Vanishing Mountain, there are 3 things I need to warn you about. First, the God Vanishing Mountain is very dangerous. Facing danger, it's best to turn and escape. Within a day and night, I can open the entrance and let you return. After a day and night, your life and death will be up to the heavens. Second, you are not allowed to disturb the supreme existence in the God Vanishing Mountain. Third, you are allowed to kill." The female King Biluo's voice was cold and filled with majesty. It was completely different from the woman eating ice cream, as if they were 2 different people. Bufong's gaze froze. "You are allowed to kill, what does that mean?" Bufong furrowed his brows. "Once you enter the God Vanishing Mountain, you will naturally understand the so-called Forbidden Land naturally has its own reason. All right, let's not talk anymore. The time has come. I will now send you into the God Vanishing Mountain," the female King Biluo said. Bufong was stunned. Could it be that the entrance to the God Vanishing Mountain was in this imperial palace? As if to confirm what Bufong was thinking in his heart, the female King Biluo's originally floating figure slowly descended. Her white wrist flicked, constantly forming seals. Finally, she released an array, smashing on the ground. Qi Si had already consciously retreated far away, her eyes filled with awe and excitement. To the women of Goddess City, the God Vanishing Mountain was not some forbidden land, but the source of their faith. It was a divine mountain that belonged to them. The array spread out, and the ground suddenly turned into a bright white. The Empress stepped on it barefoot. Her sparkling toes were illuminated by the white light, making them even more exquisite and cute. Bufong took a deep breath. He looked at the female King Biluo. Suddenly, he felt the ground shake. The white light under her feet was like a tightly closed door. The door suddenly opened with a loud bang. A supreme pressure drifted out from behind the gate. This pressure made Qi Si, who was in the distance, tremble uncontrollably, a fanatical look appearing on her face. This was the aura of the God Vanishing Mountain. Rumble. Suddenly, a beam of light shot out from the Baiguang. In an instant, it swallowed Bufong and the female King Biluo's figures. In front of Bufong, there was only a patch of white left. The female King Biluo stretched out her white and tender hand, pulling on the clothes in front of Bufong's chest, causing Bufong's figure to slightly straighten. "Follow closely behind I, otherwise if you get lost, I will not be responsible." The female King Biluo's voice seemed to ring in Bufang's ears. Her breath was like orchids, and her fragrance filled the air. Bufang's brows furrowed. Just as he was about to say something, he was pulled by the female King Biluo, walking into the distance. In a short while, they walked out of the range of the white light. A gust of cold wind blew, and in the sky, there was a snowflake the size of goose feathers falling. A circular hole appeared in front of Bufang and the female King Biluo, and the two of them came out. What they faced was a world of ice and snow. This snow was very cold, and the temperature in the air was extremely low. When they opened their mouths to speak, they could breathe out hot air. "We're here. This is the entrance to the God Vanishing Mountain. Look at that mountain that you can't see the peak of. That's the God Vanishing Mountain. Legend has it that the God Vanishing Mountain connects to the heavens, but I don't know if it's true or not. The spring of life that you want is also inside," the female King Biluo said. She stretched out her white and tender finger, pointing at the majestic snowy mountain in the distance. The snowy mountain was located there, giving Bufang a majestic feeling, making him feel pressured. "Okay." Bufang nodded, his eyes shining. "Have you really decided to go? I will ask you one last time. You can still regret it now, and you can follow I back to Goddess City to see the grand opening of your Fong Fong ice cream shop." The female King Biluo's beautiful eyes landed on Bufang's body as she asked. Bufang nodded. Without saying anything, he directly walked forward. Raising his hand, he confidently waved at the female King Biluo. Then, his figure disappeared into the violent snowstorm that filled the sky. Step by step, he walked towards the majestic God Vanishing Mountain that was shrouded in snow. The female King Biluo stood at her original spot, her scarlet-red robe fluttering like a ball of fire under the blowing snow. She did not immediately leave, but quietly stood at her original spot. Looking at Bufang's departing figure, her gaze was complicated. What a stubborn little chef. The female King Biluo bit her red lips, muttering, "Goddess City, High Priestess Mansion." The High Priestess held her golden-ringed scepter, looking at the light beam that shot straight into the sky, gently letting out a breath. "Finally set off? I hope you can return from the God Vanishing Mountain alive." Chapter 1148. A violent snowstorm blew endlessly. The heavy snowflakes, carried by the wind, slapped onto Bufang's face. The entire heaven and earth seemed to have turned into a patch of white, completely blurring one's vision. This kind of snowstorm seemed to have the will of the Great Path. Even with Bufang's current cultivation, it was hard to resist the cold wind that constantly drilled in. It was enough to make people shiver. Bufang furrowed his brows, continuing to walk forward. The snow on the ground was already very thick. With one step, half of his foot would sink into it. Bufang's mind was very alert. According to what the female King Biluo said, God Vanishing Mountain was incomparably dangerous, and he had to be careful. After all, this was a place where supreme existences had fallen. In Bufang's view, a supreme existence that even the female King Biluo called should not be much weaker than the Lord Go. If even an expert like the Lord Go could fall here, then Bufang really had to be careful. Bufang kept walking, staring at the snowstorm for a long time. Then, he stepped on the mountain path with difficulty. Slowly walking on a mountain path, Bufang was not in a hurry. From a moment Bufang entered God Vanishing Mountain until now, he had not felt the slightest fluctuation of life. The entire sky was ice cold, and the snowstorm howled. It made one's feet feel a little cold. Both of his hands were in his pockets. The vermilion robe was still warm, which made Bufang's mood a lot better. If a person continued to stay in bad weather, their mood would become very bad. No matter who it was the same. Stepping on the mountain path, Bufang's mood became slightly excited. Entering the mountain path, at least he knew the direction. Suddenly, Bufang stepped down. The ground suddenly collapsed one after another. This made Bufang's eyes suddenly shrink. Boom! Within the collapsed snow, a hand reached out, slapping towards Bufang's direction. The terrifying fluctuations seemed as though they were about to shatter the void. Bufong furrowed his brows. With a thought, his spirit sea immediately surged, and his powerful mental strength swept out. A huge black turtle constellation Wak appeared in Bufong's hand. The black turtle constellation Wak grew bigger and fiercely collided with the palm. The heavy black turtle constellation Wak caused the owner of the palm to pause for a moment. He seemed to have realized that his palm did not shatter the black Wak. With this force, Bufong flew over and landed in the distance. He raised his head and looked at the huge figure that was slowly crawling out of the ground in the distance. Bufong did not think that he would face danger the moment he stepped into God Vanishing Mountain. Although the palm, just now, didn't bring Bufong the feeling of death, it still made him feel a little nervous and a sense of crisis. Roar! A beastly roar rang out. The ferocious beast that had leapt out from the snowy ground had eyes that were suffused with a dark gold color. Its entire body was covered with snow-white fur, and hot air was spurting out of its nostrils. A terrifying aura spread out from its body. This was actually a beast emperor. According to this aura, it should be a beast emperor of at least 5 stars. Bufong sucked in a deep breath, his face solemn. He had just entered God Vanishing Mountain, and he had already discovered a beast emperor. This kind of situation didn't seem too optimistic. Could it be that God Vanishing Mountain was already filled with beast emperors? Its dark gold eyes locked onto Bufong's body, as though it was a little angry at Bufong's previous actions. That white ape beast emperor opened its mouth, revealing its sharp teeth as it let out a roar. Both of its feet fiercely stomped on the snowy ground, instantly causing snowflakes to explode. That beast emperor's figure was like a cannonball as it charged towards Bufong. A furry fist was swung out, and the air seemed to have been completely sucked out at this moment. That white ape roared, baring its fangs and brandishing its claws, wanting to kill Bufong. The white and tender Bufong, in the eyes of this white ape, was a top-grade delicacy in the snowstorm. Bufong's gaze looked at this white ape, gently letting out a breath. Reaching out, he swiped his hand across his waist. In the next instant, a tiger's roar shook the heavens, suddenly pressing down from the sky. That white ape froze, waving its fist like Bufong's, instantly changing its direction, smashing towards the stove that was descending from the sky. A muffled sound rang out. The white ape was instantly pressed onto the snowy ground by the white tiger heaven stove, its entire head buried into the snowy ground. Bufong opened its mouth, spitting out a ball of white flame. That flame danced, burning fiercely as it floated above Bufong's palm. The flame's temperature was strangely high. As the snowflakes fell from the sky, they instantly melted and evaporated. Stepping on the white snow, Bufong arrived in front of that white ape. A loud boom resounded. The white ape's head, which was buried deep in the snowy ground, suddenly lifted, roaring at Bufong. However, the white ape, who was suppressed by the white tiger heaven stove, could not move at all. He could even feel the aura of death that the stove brought him. This white ape's limited intelligence could not imagine how this weak prey could become so strong in an instant. It opened its mouth, its dark golden eyes bursting with a fierce light. However, before it could open its mouth, Bufong's hand pressed on the space between its eyebrows. Bufong's face was expressionless. With one hand pressed on the white ape's eyebrows, the other hand was holding a white flame as he approached the white ape. The scorching temperature twisted the air in front of the white ape, causing its eyes to suddenly shrink. In the snowy ground, the white ape was most afraid of fire. Bufong's immortal flame brought him extreme fear. Brazen or leading the way, Bufong said calmly. As he spoke, white smoke puffed out. On such a windy and snowy day, Bufong was too lazy to talk. The white ape looked at Bufong, its eyes shrinking. As Bufong's flame approached, the white ape's body shook unceasingly, hissing. A moment later, with a puff, its head was buried in the snowy ground once again. Motionless, it pretended to be dead. Looking at the white ape pretending to be dead, the The corners of Bu Fong's mouth twitched. All of a sudden, his mind flickered, and a piece of spirit beast meat appeared in his hand. He threw out, letting it hover above the white flame. Instantly, a sizzling sound arose. A meaty aroma diffused from it. Bu Fong's mental force wrapped around that piece of meat, roasting it until it was golden yellow. Oil droplets continuously dripped down and landed on the snow, making sizzling sounds and melting a large piece of the snow. The white ape's body shook. Then it slowly lifted its head from the snowy ground. White snowflakes fell from its nostrils. The white ape stared at the roasted meat. Its mouth opened, drooling, "Lead the way. There's food," Bu Fong said. That piece of roasted golden spirit beast meat floated in the air, constantly spinning. The fragrance assailed the nostrils, constantly spreading out. That white ape quickly nodded its head. As stubborn as it was, it directly submitted under the temptation of delicious food. "Very good. Be good." The corners of Bu Fong's mouth twitched. With a flick of his finger, that piece of meat instantly flew towards the white ape. The white ape bit it. Munch, munch, munch. A wave of chewing sounds and grunting sounds rang out. The white ape ate happily. Bu Fong put away the white tiger heaven stove. Clasping his hands, he indifferently looked at the white ape. He needed to lead the way to the god-vanishing mountain to find the spring of life. If he wanted to find it himself, he would naturally be dumbfounded. After all, the god-vanishing mountain was so huge. After the white ape ate its fill, it grabbed the white snow on the ground. After chewing for a while, it exhaled white gas, looking at Bu Fong with a flattering look. "With delicious food, you're the boss." This white ape was just that realistic. "Do you know where the spring of life is?" Bu Fong looked at the white ape, asking. The white ape seemed to understand Bu Fong's words, tilting its head. "The spring of life?" In the next instant, the white ape's mouth opened into a circle, its head swaying up and down. Bu Fong's heart instantly lit up. "Bring me there. Lots of roasted meat." Hearing the word roasted meat, the white ape's dark golden eyes instantly lit up, dancing with excitement. Suddenly, the white ape and Bu Fong were both stunned. The man and the beast raised their heads, looking at the sky. The snowstorm that filled the sky had finally dissipated. The snow had stopped. Seeing that the snow had stopped, the white ape instantly turned around and walked into the distance, as if it wanted to bring Bu Fong to the spring of life. The corners of Bu Fong's mouth twitched. Indeed, there was nothing that a delicious meal couldn't solve. If one meal couldn't do it, then 2 meals would do. Taking a step, Bu Fong planned to follow. However, in the next instant, Bu Fong's eyes abruptly shrank. In the distance, the white ape took 2 steps forward. All of a sudden, its body flew to the side. The ground suddenly exploded violently, and snowflakes swirled in the air. A huge pit appeared on the ground, extending to the feet of Bu Fong. In the middle of the deep pit was the white ape's limp body. Hot blood flowed out, staining the snowy ground. On the white ape's head, there was an arrow. The tail of the arrow was still slightly trembling, with pitch-black nether energy circulating on it. Bu Fong furrowed his brows. His mental force moved, instantly looking at the sky in the distance. There, several figures slowly stepped out of the void. The one in the lead was a white-haired expert, carrying a pitch-black longbow on his back, emitting dense nether energy. Behind him, there were 4 experts wrapped in black robes, also emitting nether energy. Our luck is not bad. The snow has just stopped, and we already found prey." The indifferent voice of the leading expert spread out in the void. Finally, the gaze wrapped in the black robe turned, landing on Bu Fong's body. The terrifying pressure instantly made Bu Fong's breathing stagnate. God-vanishing mountain? How could there be other people? Were they also people from Earth Prison? Bu Fong's heart was suddenly filled with doubt. The female King Biluo had said that she had not opened the passage to God-vanishing mountain for a long time. Logically speaking, there should not be anyone in God-vanishing mountain. Why would there be 5 people? And the aura on these people's bodies. The weakest seemed to have reached 7-star true, immortal realm. The strongest person, who was also the leader, had a cultivation not weaker than Chi-Si and Dami Hayashi. He should be at the peak of true immortal realm. The appearance of this group of people made Bu Fong very surprised. The five people's gazes turned, landing on Bu Fong's body, with a smile that was not a smile. Their prey was not the white ape, but Bu Fong. Someone from Earth Prison, and a chef at that, to actually use delicacies to tempt that snow ape to lead the way. You're really capable. The expert with the longbow on his back grinned and chuckled. The five of them looked at Bu Fong condescendingly and laughed with merciless mockery. They could see through Bu Fong's cultivation with a glance. He was just a 3-star true immortal realm. To them, this kind of cultivation was not enough to be feared. You guys are from Nether Prison. Bu Fong took a deep breath, then slowly exhaled as he looked at the 5 white-haired experts. The aura on this group of people was very similar to the aura of the 9 Revolution Nether Chef Clan's experts that Bu Fong had fought before. But why would people from Nether Prison appear in God Vanishing Mountain? Wasn't this a forbidden land of Earth Prison? Bu Fong's head was filled with fog. However, he did not think too much about it. His face was slightly gloomy. Looking at the white ape whose head had been pierced by an arrow, an unknown anger rose in his heart. Oh, you actually know that we're from Nether Prison? But it doesn't matter. The roast meat you roasted earlier smelled really good. We're hungry. Now, if you immediately roast meat for us and let us eat comfortably, we might even spare your dog life. The 5 of them landed. They calmly said. Looking at Bu Fong, they slowly walked over. The 3-star true immortal realm Bu Fong, in their eyes, was just an ant that could be trampled on. Although they did not understand why this kind of trash would appear in God Vanishing Mountain. But what did this have to do with them? This ant was a chef, and he could cook good food. They had stayed in God Vanishing Mountain and the world of ice and snow for a few days, so they had basically forgotten the taste of hot food. Bu Fong's appearance just happened to solve their urgent problem. As for whether Bu Fong agreed or not, it was not within their consideration. This 3-star, true, immortal realm ant, what qualifications did he have to disagree? Bu Fong's face was cold as he coldly looked at the 5 of them. These 5 people looked at him as though they were looking at a piece of meat on a chopping board, making him very unhappy in his heart. He glanced at the white ape whose corpse had already turned cold. Bu Fong exhaled. His hand shook. A piping hot, bursting, pissing beef meatball instantly fell into his palm. This group of people wanted to eat hot food? Very good. Then let them heat it up to their heart's content. Chapter 1149. The white ape's death was too unexpected. His death was too aggrieved, so Bu Fong was a little unhappy. It was mainly because Bu Fong had finally found a beast emperor that could bring him to the spring of life, but it was shot to death by these people who suddenly appeared. All his previous efforts were in vain. And this group of people shot the white ape to death just because they needed Bu Fong to cook them a hot dish. The leader's gaze locked onto Bu Fong. He seemed to be able to feel the anger coming from Bu Fong's body. However, this anger was just a joke to them. An ant could also be angry. The people of Nether Prison had a sense of superiority towards Earth Prison. In their eyes, Earth Prison was a secondary plane, much worse than Nether Prison. HM, what's that in your hand? The leader, a white-haired man with a black longbow on his back, narrowed his eyes. With a glance, he saw the pale gold bursting meatball that appeared in Bu Fong's hand. The main reason was that the meatball's fragrance and energy fluctuations were too eye-catching. Almost everyone saw this bursting meatball. Are you talking about this? Bu Fong scanned the crowd, expressionlessly raising the bursting meatball in his hand. That meatball was filled with steam, emitting a golden radiance. It looked quite appetizing. The eyes of the 5 Nether Prison experts lit up. "Give that meatball to me," the leader said. He crossed his arms over his chest, looking high and mighty, ordering people around. In his eyes, this ant didn't even have the right to resist him. The corner of Bu Fong's mouth twitched. The people of Nether Prison were all so arrogant. Back then, that 9 Revolution Nether Chef expert also arrogantly grabbed the bursting meatball with his hand. The one in front of him also wanted to feel that kind of despair? I can't refuse such a request of yours, Bufong said. The disdain in the eyes of those nether prison experts became more intense. They all laughed, their laughter filled with mockery. This guy was indeed a soft persimmon. He calmly looked at the five of them, holding an explosive pissing meatball between his fingers. Then Bufong placed it in his mouth and gently bit down, making a small opening. You want it warm, right? I hope you can accept it, Bufong said. His voice seemed to linger in the world of ice and snow. In the next moment, Bufong flicked his finger. Then, that meatball turned into a golden stream of light, rapidly flying towards those nether prison experts. You dare to fool me? The eyes of the leading nether prison expert flashed with anger. The meatball had been bitten by Bufong. How could he throw something that had been eaten at them? Courting death. That nether prison expert's face was as cold as water, his white hair fluttering in the wind. Looking at the golden ball shooting towards him, Yi Zichen's eyes widened. A myriad of lights erupted from his eyes. Then, he reached out his hand, intending to grab the meatball. Bufong's action was out of everyone's expectations. Then, the remaining nether prison experts looked at Bufong, their faces revealing a playful expression. This ant from Earth Prison should be courting death. They could already see the scene of that Earth Prison ant being shot full of arrows by that angry white-haired youth. Suddenly, they froze. This was because they sensed a strange ripple that seemed to contain a terrifying destructive power. Everyone was stunned. Their minds sensed the direction where the fluctuation came from. It was that meatball that had been bitten. That terrifying fluctuation came from that meatball. This meatball is strange, someone roared. The leading expert's white hair fluttered as he stared at that golden explosive pissing meatball. His skin felt as though it was about to explode, and a hair-raising feeling suddenly covered his body. That was an aura that was approaching death. Bufong clasped his hands, his vermilion robe fluttering. He indifferently looked at those people in the distance, the corners of his mouth twitching as he lightly spat out a word. Explode. Boom. In the next instant, the golden explosive pissing meatball neared those five nether prison experts, it exploded. Flames filled the sky, sweeping out as though it was going to devour everything. A terrifying fluctuation surged out like a storm. Waves of golden ripples spread out like a hurricane, blowing Bufong's hair, the vermilion robe sticking close to his body. A huge explosion reached the heavens. The heat spread, as though it carried the will of the heavenly path exploding, causing those five nether prison experts to be swallowed by the flames before they could react. Bufong clasped his hands, his mind moving. The violent explosion seemed to have spread throughout the entire God-vanishing mountain. His eyes involuntarily narrowed. There seemed to be a rumbling sound coming from the God-vanishing mountain. It was as though an avalanche was about to happen. Of course, the avalanche did not happen. An explosive pissing meatball was still a little difficult to cause an avalanche. Whoosh above the sky, snow began to fall again. However, this time, the snow was light snow. In the distance, a huge crater appeared. In the crater, the snow melted and the ground cracked. There were people howling, and a burnt smell filled the air. Bufong looked at that crater. He knew that an explosive pissing meatball should not be able to kill those people. Although the other party was careless and ate a full explosion, they were still nether prison experts. The strongest one was even at the peak of the true God realm, not weaker than people like Dami Hayashi. Hence, Bufong did not dare to be careless. Bufong's foot stepped down. Suddenly, his eyes narrowed. Within the crater, a pitch-black arrow shot out of black smoke, carrying surging nether energy as it shot towards Bufong's head. It seemed to want to pierce through Bufong, nailing him to the ground, just like nailing the white ape. However, Bufong was not the white ape, so he naturally would not fall for it so easily. His feet moved in a mysterious footwork. His figure became blurry as he directly dodged the arrow, continuing to tread on the snow. The smoke and dust gradually dissipated. With a swoosh, a figure shot out from within. Damn it, actually daring to trick us. The sinister voice was filled with thick anger. They originally thought that this fellow should be an ant, but they did not expect that the other party was actually a vicious wolf bearing its fangs. Their small team was almost annihilated here. However, even if they were not completely annihilated, that meatball with the explosive power of the heavenly paths will had greatly injured their vitality. Among them, the weaker ones were directly blown to death. Violent gasps for breath resounded. The three people that shot out from the pit were in an incomparably miserable state. Their eyes were filled with dense fear. That meatball could actually burst out such a powerful force. They simply did not expect it. They directly fell for it. The meatball could actually explode? Delicacies could also have killing power? What kind of situation was this? Even if it was their nether prison's 9 revolution nether chefs, the delicacies cooked could not have such explosive power, right? After all, delicacies were to be eaten. Why would they explode? And to Bufong, why couldn't delicacies explode? If one meatball couldn't deal with it, then two. With a flick of his finger. Another pale, gold-bursting, pissing meatball sizzled and emitted hot steam. It left a trail behind as it flew towards the nether prison expert with a whoosh. A loud explosion rang out. Once again, flames soared into the sky, and a terrifying fluctuation spread out. That leading expert's body seemed to be full of fragments, about to explode. Damn it, that expert flipped over and got out. He was in an extremely sorry state. 2 explosive meatballs had almost taken his life. Looking at Bufong, who had his hands clasped behind his back and was holding a meatball, everyone seemed to be looking at a demon. Swoosh, Bufong's face was cold. In the next instant, 5 bursting meatballs appeared around his body. With a flick of his finger, one by one, they shot out. Boom, boom. The sound of explosions rang out incessantly. That nether prison expert was instantly thrown into chaos, unable to block in time. He wanted to escape, but he couldn't. The speed of those meatballs was too fast, like a stream of light, closing in an instant. After forcefully enduring a few, he finally couldn't take it anymore. The strange fluctuation contained within the bursting meatball was something he couldn't take at all. He was blown to death. The 5 nether prison experts finally died as they wished. Bufong raised his hand, holding a bursting meatball. Around his body, there were 2 more bursting meatballs flying around. Is it over? Bufong muttered, then kept the 2 bursting meatballs. Raising his head, he looked at the god-vanishing mountain that he couldn't see the peak. Where would the spring of life be? The peak of god-vanishing mountain? That was possible. Without the white ape leading the way, the 5 nether prison experts had been blown to death by him. Bufong had now returned to the situation of traveling alone. Gently letting out a breath, he stuck his hands into his pockets. Then, stepping on the snowstorm, he shot out. In a short while, he disappeared from his original spot, shooting towards the mountain. The snow became heavier and heavier. The steaming ruins were quickly buried by the snow. Very quickly, the white ape's corpse and those nether prison experts' corpses were all swallowed by the snowstorm. Who knew how many corpses like this had been swallowed under the god-vanishing mountain? Suddenly, an explosive sound that tore through the air resounded. 2 pitch-black figures flew over from the distance, the snow behind them billowing. Very quickly, they floated to the place where Bufong and the nether prison experts were fighting. On the ground, there was only pure white snow. They died here. I can feel a wave of unwillingness spreading from their bodies. A hoarse voice resounded, and it sounded like sand being ground. Although they aren't the monstrous geniuses of our nether prison, in God-vanishing mountain, they shouldn't have been completely wiped out. Who did it? I don't know who did it, but I know that the God-vanishing mountain will be very interesting. Don't look down on Earth Prison's Forbidden Land. Since it's called the Forbidden Land, it naturally has great terror. Earth Prison's Forbidden Land? Didn't it still become a trial ground for our nether prison's younger generation? The 2 looked at the pure, white snow below, discussing. Then, the 2 of them became silent. In the end, they both released nether energy, tearing the sky as they rushed towards God-vanishing mountain. Not only here, in every corner of God-vanishing mountain, there were figures explosively shooting out, rushing towards the peak of God-vanishing mountain. Bufong stepped down, and the snowflakes sunk deep into the ground. He was neither fast nor slow, slowly climbing towards the peak of the mountain. The spring of life was a sacred great immortal ingredient, and there was a high possibility that it would exist at the peak of God-vanishing mountain. Boom! Suddenly, just as Bufong was about to take a step forward, suddenly, there was an explosion from the distance. Snowflakes exploded, and one after another, pitch-black figures wrapped in nether energy shot towards the peak of the mountain like cannonballs. The surroundings of the God-vanishing mountain were filled with experts like this. Bufong instantly froze, extremely puzzled. What happened? Why were there so many nether prison experts racing up God-vanishing mountain? That's right. These nether prison experts were competing, as if competing to reach the peak first. It was already very strange for nether prison experts to appear in Earth Prison's forbidden land, God-vanishing mountain. However, these nether prison experts were competing to ascend the mountain, which was even more strange. Suddenly, Bufong's expression slightly changed. This group of people wouldn't also be here for the Spring of Life, right? Bufong did not know much about God-vanishing mountain, only knowing that Realm Lord had said that the Spring of Life was in God-vanishing mountain. To be able to make these nether prison experts compete, it should only be the Spring of Life, right? Bufong deeply sucked in a breath. He felt that he could not be at a disadvantage. He had to obtain the Spring of Life. His mind moved. A ray of golden light suddenly appeared and shot out. Xiaopi appeared in front of Bufong. Bufong reached out his hand, patting Xiaopi's head. Then, Xiaopi turned into a huge golden mantis shrimp. Bufong's figure flipped, riding on it. "Xiaopi, let's go," Bufong said with an expressionless face. A loud rumbling sound rang out. Xiaopi's densely packed legs dug on the snowy ground, his figure like a cannonball as he sped towards the peak of God-vanishing mountain. In an instant, he surpassed many nether prison experts who were ascending the mountain. This caused those experts to have a face of confusion. Chapter 1150. Xiaopi's speed was very fast, like a beam of golden light. In just an instant, he shot out, causing snowflakes to shoot out. In the surroundings, the speeding nether prison experts all furrowed their brows. The aura on their bodies was very strong, and each of them was not weak. At least, compared to the few nether prison experts that Bufong had met before, they were much stronger. Bufong sat on Xiaopi's body, and Xiaopi was like a wild horse that had escaped its reins, constantly charging towards the peak of God-vanishing mountain at an extremely fast speed. With so many nether prison experts charging toward the peak at the same time, he would not believe it if he said that there was nothing good there. And in God-vanishing mountain, the only thing that could be coveted by so many people was probably the Spring of Life. After all, it was a saint-grade immortal ingredient. Back then, didn't the 9 Revolution Nether Chef clan attack Heaven Chief Realm's Heaven Tree Seed, a saint-grade immortal ingredient? Hence, the temptation of a saint-grade immortal ingredient was enough to make these people go crazy. Of course, this was what Bufong thought. In reality, Bufong was not clear at all. Those nether prison experts were a little confused. That guy's also from our nether prison. He wants to fight for the first place in the trial? The first place in the trial is mine. No one can snatch it from me. The first place of the nether prison younger generation must belong to my 9 Revolution Nether Chef clan. When those nether prison experts saw Bufong, they were left far behind. Everyone's eyes were filled with unwillingness after they recovered from their momentary daze. Boom, boom. In the next instant, every expert's trump card, which they had been suppressing, burst out. The nether energy that soared into the sky seemed to turn into a pitch-black pillar of light, charging into the clouds. Black energy spread out from these people's bodies. In the next instant, their speed sped out. Using both hands and feet, they sped on the white snow. Snow flew everywhere as they sped. Everyone exploded out with extreme speed, chasing after that golden light in front of them. Bufong was also startled. Turning his head to look, he saw a group of nether prison experts chasing after him crazily. Bufong raised his eyebrows, feeling a wave of shock in his heart. Was there something wrong with this group of people? Bufong sucked in a breath of cold air, then raised his hand and pressed it on Xiaopi's head. Xiaopi, speed up. The next moment, the golden light on Xiaopi's body became even more dazzling, and his speed increased again. A strong gust of wind blew over, brushing against Bufong's body, causing his vermilion robe to flutter. The nether prison experts down below were struck dumb once again. Who the hell is this guy? Are you determined to get first place in the trial? Lost? There is no such thing. I don't believe it. The nether prison experts once again went crazy. Nether energy surged around their bodies as they crazily rushed towards the peak of God-vanishing mountain. The wind and snow continued to fall. The rumbling sounds continued to resound on the mountaintop. In the next moment, everyone was startled. They looked up at the mountaintop, only to realize that there was a patch of white mist crashing down from above. It was accompanied by a tsunami, great avalanche. The faces of every nether prison expert turned extremely unsightly. However, even the great avalanche could not stop their figures. Boom, boom, boom. Figure after figure turned into black lines, charging into the descending great avalanche. The avalanche roared like raging waves, like a waterfall. Its power was extremely shocking. Bufong rode on Xiaopi, not dodging or avoiding, charging straight into it. The avalanche continued for a while. When Bufong rode Xiaopi out of the range of the avalanche, the scene in front of him suddenly changed. Bufong's entire person froze. The icy cold wind had disappeared, leaving behind only the warm autumn wind. What came into view was a maple forest. The fiery red maple leaves swayed in the autumn wind, making a rustling sound. On the ground, there were piles of maple leaves. Riding on Xiaopi, he landed on the maple leaves. Bufong felt a little dazed. After winter's morning, autumn obscurity, Bufong felt a little suspicious in his heart. However, it was just a little suspicious. Raising his head to look at the God-vanishing mountain that had yet to reach its peak, a strange feeling appeared in his heart. Boom, boom. Below, in the haze, streams of black energy shot up into the sky. These black energy smashed down, landing on the ground, causing the maple leaves to be blown away. Bufong's face froze. These nether prison experts had rushed over again. Xiaopi, shake them off. Bufong flipped onto Xiaopi, calmly saying. Xiaopi's gold-like body instantly flashed with light. In the next instant, it shot out like a spring, disappearing from everyone's vision in an instant. Those nether prison experts landed. Before they could even take a breath, they discovered that the golden light had once again charged forward. They gritted their teeth. In order to be first in the trial, they once again burst forth with speed, heading towards the God-vanishing mountain. The maple leaves scattered, drifting in all directions. The vermilion robe swept. The densely packed black flowing light chased after the golden flowing light in front. These rays of light charged towards the God-vanishing mountain. Boom! Charging through a layer of fog. In the next instant, the maple leaves that filled their eyes disappeared. What filled their eyes were the dark green leaves and the high temperature. The oppressive summer aura caused Bufong's heart to shake. He seemed to have discovered something incredible. Every part of this God-vanishing mountain seemed to be slightly similar to the sacrificial dishes that he had cooked before. At least, in terms of meaning, it was similar. At this moment, reaching the position of the God-vanishing mountain, Bufong could already feel a wave of pressure. This pressure caused Xiaopi's compound eyes to spin nonstop. It seemed to be a little anxious. Puff, puff. Within the fog, streaks of black light shot out, landing on the ground. These nether prison experts were all gasping for breath. It was unknown how tall the God-vanishing mountain was. But as they climbed, the pressure on their bodies became greater and greater, becoming more and more terrifying, belonging to a forbidden land. But these nether prison experts still did not give up, continuing to climb up. Bufong seemed to be in a hurry to confirm his thoughts, urging Xiaopi to continue climbing. Xiaopi gave a zhi cry, then continued to turn into a flowing light as it climbed up. Some of the nether prison experts were so tired that they sat on the ground, gasping for breath. Looking at the golden beams of light moving again, they gritted their teeth in hatred. But they were also unwilling to give up the first place in the trial like this. Moreover, they were all nether prison geniuses. Now that they were competing, naturally no one was willing to give way to the other. After resting for a while, they continued to climb. The higher they went, the greater the pressure and the greater the test for everyone. As the nether prison geniuses, it was to be able to obtain a baptism in this trial. Using the Forbidden Land as the trial ground, the people who led these geniuses were also very extraordinary. Buzz, when the summer disappeared, what appeared was the spring wind. At this point, Bufong could confirm that the meaning of the sacrificial dishes came from the god Vanishing Mountain. Or it could be said that the supreme existence in the god Vanishing Mountain had imperceptibly changed the environment of the god Vanishing Mountain, causing it to complement the sacrificial dishes. The spring wind brushed past, already standing on the mountain peak. The peak of the god Vanishing Mountain seemed to have become a huge valley. Within the valley, the spring wind brushed past, giving off the feeling of spring. It was a scene full of vitality. In the middle of the valley, there was a small pond. In that small pond, there was dense energy lingering, as if immortal energy was floating. Around the small pond, there was a rich fruit fragrance, and the trees rustled, swaying nonstop. Bufong and Xiaopi stood at the edge of the valley, looking at the enchanting scenery within, and couldn't help but be a little absent-minded. No one knew that at the peak of the god Vanishing Mountain, there was actually another world. Is that the spring of life? Bufong looked at the small pond in the distance. The liquid in the small pond seemed to have 7 colors, looking very beautiful. Xiaopi made a sound, indicating that he also didn't know. However, before Bufong could come back to his senses, Xiaopi shot out with a sizzle, turning into a golden stream of light as he charged in. With a boom, he smashed into that small pond. Water splashed everywhere, and the dense energy seemed to have a hole torn open, violently rolling. Bufong slightly raised his eyebrows, stepping on the air, coming to the top of that pond. Xiaopi leisurely swayed in it, causing the calm 7-colored pond to constantly release ripples. This is the spring of life? Bufong seemed to feel a little strange. The spring of life did not have as dense of life energy as he had imagined. Bufong slowly descended, his feet stepping on the surface of the pond. Bending down, he stretched out his hand, scooping up the water. The water flowed through the gaps between his fingers, not as lively as he had imagined. It's a little strange. This doesn't seem to be the spring of life, Bufong seriously said. Right at this moment, Bufong suddenly heard the sound of something tearing through the air. With a thought, Bufong raised his hand, catching the thing that was flying towards the back of his head. It was actually a vermilion fruit filled with dense essence energy. That's right, it wasn't a fake vermilion fruit. It was a real vermilion fruit, an extremely top-grade spirit fruit. Bufong had made vermilion fruit-flavored ice cream before, but the flavor of the vermilion fruit wasn't the real vermilion fruit. It was just a fake vermilion fruit grown in Goddess City. Although the fruit that was produced was 70 to 80% similar to a vermilion fruit, it was indeed not a vermilion fruit. But this time, the fruit that Bufong caught was boiling hot, and its life essence soared to the sky. This was the real vermilion fruit. Bufong looked into the distance. There was a dense forest, and in the forest, there was a pure white figure standing. It was a white little fox. Its fur was like snow, and its big eyes were rolling around, looking very intelligent. Bufong looked at Xiaobai Fox. Without a doubt, that vermilion fruit was thrown over by her. The corners of Bufong's mouth twitched, and he grabbed the vermilion fruit and took a bite. With a poochy sound, the warm juice spread out from within the vermilion fruit. That sour taste made Bufong involuntarily furrow his brows. This vermilion fruit, so sour, it seemed like it wasn't completely ripe yet. In the distance, that Xiaobai fox seemed to understand Bufang's furrowed brows, instantly laughing nonstop. Her snow-white tail swayed left and right, looking extremely cute. Boom, boom, boom. Suddenly, the fog in the distance exploded. Streams of black energy soared into the sky. Then, they fiercely smashed down, landing at the edge of the valley of God Vanishing Mountain. Sizzle. The black energy on these people's bodies was dense, and it was difficult to disperse. Everyone was panting heavily. They landed at the edge of the valley. After a long time, their eyes moved, looking at Bufang, who was stepping on the lake's surface. They recognized him. This fellow was the one who forced them to continuously rush up the mountain. And at this moment, all of them clearly saw Bufang's appearance. Everyone seemed to be constipated. This fellow isn't from Nether Prison. The Nether Prison experts all looked gloomy. Suddenly, the gazes of the Nether Prison experts turned, landing on the figure of the white fox in the forest. The Xiaobai fox's body instantly froze. As for those Nether Prison experts, their eyes all shot out a bright light. Found it. Trial target. God Vanishing Mountain, Heavenly Star Arctic Fox. A Nether Prison expert let out a light shout. Instantly, above the entire valley, the atmosphere abruptly became stagnant. Those incomparably fanatical Nether Prison experts seemed to only have that Xiaobai fox in their eyes. Boom! Boom! The aura on every Nether Prison expert's body suddenly exploded. Dozens of auras rushed into the sky, and Nether energy seemed to fill the entire peak of God Vanishing Mountain. Bufang stood on the seven-colored lake, and he couldn't help but be a little stunned. These people's target wasn't the spring of life, but that Xiaobai fox? Boom! 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 Those Nether Prison experts made their move. All of them tore through the air, flying towards Xiaobai fox. Explosions rang out. The Nether Prison experts plunged into the dense forest, causing the dense forest to explode continuously. Suddenly, Bufang's eyes narrowed. In the distance, a ray of white light suddenly shot towards him. That Xiaobai fox had actually avoided the Nether Prison expert's capture. In the next instant, with a plop, it plunged into the pool beneath his feet. The gazes of the surrounding Nether Prison experts all turned over. Their gazes were filled with malicious intent. Plop! Xiaobai seemed to have been frightened by something, quickly scurrying out, finally lying on Bufang's shoulder, its compound eyes rolling around as it stared at the pool. In the pool, a huge change suddenly occurred. A terrifying aura instantly spread out. Chapter 1151. Rumble. God Vanishing Mountain Peak within the valley. The seven-colored pool under Bufang's feet suddenly changed, and bubbles began to rise from it. After the little white fox drilled into it, the entire lake began to ripple. In the distance, the gazes of the few Nether Prison experts staring at Bufang involuntarily narrowed, feeling a terrifying aura spreading. However, although this terrifying aura was terrifying, it did not make them retreat. This God Vanishing Mountain was the trial ground for the younger generation of the Nether Prison, and it was also a great opportunity that belonged to them. If they could catch the Heavenly Star Arctic Fox, it meant that they had obtained first place in the trial, and the reward for first place was very generous. None of them could resist this temptation. Taking advantage of the fact that those peak monsters had not arrived yet, they had to quickly catch the Heavenly Star Arctic Fox. Beneath their feet, the ground exploded. Those Nether Prison experts all shot out, flying towards Bufang. Their target was the seven-colored pool under Bufang's feet. They wanted to enter the pool and catch the Heavenly Star Arctic Fox. God Vanishing Mountain is a forbidden land, but it's only SOSO. It was so easy to find the Heavenly Star Arctic Fox. It said that the forbidden lands are terrifying. Looking at it now, it's just an exaggeration. Along the way, other than the scenery changing, the so-called terrifying thing did not appear. As the Nether Prison experts spoke, their gazes locked onto Bufang's body. As a non-Nether Prison expert, Bufong had naturally become a thorn in many people's eyes. Of course, this thorn could be easily bent. It was said that one had to revere the Forbidden Lands. However, this god-vanishing mountain really made the Nether Prison experts unable to revere it. The Heavenly Star Arctic Fox is in the seven-colored pool. A Nether Prison expert excitedly roared. Then, his figure shot out like a cannonball, rapidly charging towards the pool. However, just as he charged out, the pond immediately underwent a drastic change, and raging waves suddenly arose within the pond. The seven-colored waves were incomparably dazzling, extremely enchanting. That Nether Prison expert, who was shooting out, was suddenly stunned. His body froze in that instant, because in the next moment he discovered that there was a huge, furry, and sinister claw extending out from the water. That claw was incomparably huge and only had 3 fingers. The fingers were slender and curved. A terrifying, binding force burst forth from a claw. That Nether Prison expert's pupils shrank as he tried to escape in fear. However, he found that he couldn't escape at all. Poochie! The claw suddenly clenched tightly. That 8-star, true, immortal realm Nether Prison expert was crushed to death. Death in one move. A remnant soul flew out from the crushed body and floated into the seven-colored pool, merging with it. Bufong was the closest, so he had the clearest view. He sucked in a breath of cold air. This pool was actually hiding such a terrifying existence. Why was he standing on the surface of a lake, completely fine? Bufong was shocked. That should be a beast emperor. No, it should be a saint beast. A saint realm spirit beast could crush an 8-star, true, immortal realm Nether Prison expert with one claw. Even a 9-star beast emperor might not be able to do that. Bufong's feet tapped on the surface of the pool, instantly causing ripples to spread. His figure flew backward. His robe fluttered as he flew toward the ground to the side. Suddenly, Bufong's figure trembled. His brows twitched. In the air, Bufong saw the seven-colored pool. In that instant, the seven-colored light dissipated, revealing a pair of scarlet eyes shining from the bottom of the pool. In the distance, the other Nether Prison experts had long retreated in fear, not daring to casually step into that pool. They had just said that the Forbidden Land was not terrifying, and in an instant, a Nether Prison expert was killed. They were all a little worried. Suddenly, that huge claw suddenly loosened its grip, and the Nether Prison expert's broken body fell into the lake. Ryup! That huge claw instantly slapped towards the remaining Nether Prison experts. Boom! 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 Nether energy rushed into the sky. All kinds of powerful moves were thrown out, smashing onto that claw. However, it did not move the claw in the slightest. A claw slapped down. The water in the pool was swaying. One by one, the Nether Prison experts were unable to escape. Under this claw, they were all smashed to death, like mosquitoes being smashed to death. After being smashed to death, the broken body was not thrown away. It was grabbed by the claw and dragged into the pool. It caused the seven-colored light in the pool to become even more demonic. This water, Bufong's face was a little black. After several Nether Prison experts had died, the remaining Nether Prison experts were already scared out of their wits. Without any hesitation, they turned around and jumped out of the valley, leaving the peak of God-vanishing mountain. That huge claw turned, aiming at Bufong. Swish! It was as if the sky was being torn apart. It quickly slapped towards Bufong. That claw contained a terrifying aura, as if it wanted to shatter a person's mind. A terrifying storm swept out, as if it wanted to press people onto the ground. Bufong felt his vermilion robe fluttering, the powerful aura causing his entire body to tense up. The feeling this spirit beast gave him was similar to that time in Hell's Acheron River, when he faced that torch dragon. Even compared to that torch dragon, this spirit beast was even more berserk. Bufong instinctively activated the vermilion robe. With a bird cry, the red and white vermilion robe instantly turned scarlet red. A pair of flaming wings appeared on its back, spreading out. Bufong looked straight at that claw. Suddenly, just as that claw was about to slap down, it suddenly stopped. It hung in the air. Bright red blood dripped down from the wound. With a plop, it dripped onto the ground. Rumble. The water splashed, and the claw suddenly retracted. Huh? Bu Fong was bewildered. He was ready to activate the invincibility of the vermilion robe, but the claw retracted? What was going on? Why didn't that claw slap down? Was it because I'm handsome? Bu Fong muttered in his heart. He couldn't figure out what the spirit beast in the pool was thinking. With a puff, a white, jade-like fox leaped out of the water. It landed on that huge spirit beast's claw. The white fox's entire body glowed, and its fox tail swayed. After rubbing the paw, Yi Zichin the white fox suddenly leaped out, turning into a baiguang, dashing toward Bu Fong. Swish! As soon as the white fox left, the huge claw also sank into the pool. There was no sign of life, as if nothing had happened. The white fox leaped onto the shore, gliding on the shore for a while. Soon, it appeared by Bu Fong's side. It circled around Bu Fong, moving here and there. All of a sudden, the white fox leaped, landing on Bu Fong's shoulder. Its white fox tail swept across Bu Fong's face. Bu Fong didn't understand why this little Hu fox was so enthusiastic. The little Hu fox stuck out its tongue, licking Bu Fong's face. Then, it stared at Bu Fong like a human. Bu Fong's scalp went numb. This fox, could it be that she had taken a fancy to him? Bu Fong thought. However, when he met the little Hu fox's eyes, Bu Fong was bewildered. This gaze seemed familiar. Thinking about it carefully, wasn't it the same as that silly Hades-era's eyes when he asked for spicy strips? The corners of Bu Fong's mouth twitched. Did this fox fancy something delicious on me? Thinking about that, Bu Fong's mind flickered. Instantly, he narrowed his eyes. He took out a spicy strip. The fragrant spicy strip exuded a strong aroma. The little Bai fox came over, twitching its nose and sniffing. Then it covered its nose with its paw, taking a few steps back. Seems like you don't like spicy strips. Bu Fong put away the spicy strip and took out many delicacies from the system's dimensional bag. He asked the little Hu fox to find them one by one. Finally, when Bu Fong took out the bursting pissing meatball, the little Hu fox's eyes brightened. The little Bai fox dashed over, its paw holding the bursting pissing meatball. Then, it opened its mouth and swallowed it. Bu Fong was dumbfounded. Then, his face changed. That was the bursting pissing meatball. Its explosive power was enough to injure a 9-star, true Immortal Realm expert. If there were several of them, even a 9-star, true Immortal Realm expert could be killed easily. This little Hu fox actually swallowed such a thing. Bu Fong hurriedly pinched the little Bai fox's mouth, trying to dig out the bursting pissing meatball. However, when the little Hu fox opened its mouth, it was already empty. Boom! A muffled sound rang out. While Bu Fong was still in a daze, the little Hu fox's abdomen suddenly swelled, emitting a muffled sound. Then, it returned to its original state. The little Hu fox opened its mouth, spitting out a mouthful of murky air, then burped. After burping, it reached out its paw and licked it. It looked like it hadn't had enough. Was the little Hu fox's stomach made of divine iron? It ate an bursting, pissing meatball, and it was still intact? The little Hu fox's figure dashed, once again running to Bu Fong's shoulder. He didn't expect that the little Hu fox could really eat the bursting, pissing meatball. Even if it was Bu Fong himself, he wouldn't dare to eat this thing. Taking out another meatball, he handed it to the little Bai fox. The little Bai fox held the bursting, pissing meatball, sniffing it with an intoxicated look. In the end, it opened its mouth, swallowing the meatball. With a gulp, it entered its stomach. With a boom, another muffled sound rang out. A bomb-eating fox. This is the corner of Bu Fong's mouth twitched. This god Vanishing Mountain actually had such a thing. The main point was, the kindness that this little Bai fox emitted towards him was really too strange. Wait a minute, Bu Fong froze. He seemed to have thought of something. Could it be that this little Bai fox was related to that terrifying existence that was slumbering in this god Vanishing Mountain? Was that why it knew that he had food on him? Thinking about it this way, it became more and more possible. Bu Fong's eyes became bright, staring at the little Bai fox, causing little Bai's fur to stand up. Little fellow, Seeing that you're covered in white fur from now on, I'll call you Little Hu. Bu Fong raised his hand, rubbing Little Hu's head. Little Hu, on the other hand, was intoxicated with its eyes narrowed. Little Hu, do you know where the spring of life is? Bu Fong thought about it, but still asked an important question. That rainbow-colored pool definitely couldn't be the spring of life. It looked more like the bath of a certain holy beast. Thus, the spring of life should be somewhere else. As for where it was, Bu Fong really couldn't find it. The spring of life? Little Hu tilted its head and thought for a moment. Then, the fox's eyes lit up, looking at Bu Fong. With a leap, it jumped down from Bu Fong's shoulder, landing on the ground. Little Hu swung its tail, intending to bring Bu Fong to the spring of life. However, just as it took a step, the fur on Little Hu's body suddenly stood up. Bu Fong also furrowed his brows, looking into the distance. There, the mist was torn apart. Two silhouettes slowly appeared. A terrifying aura instantly filled the entire area. Finally found it. The gray-haired man with 3 long swords on his back stared at Bu Fong, the corners of his mouth slightly curling up. At the bottom of God Vanishing Mountain, my nether prison's experts were killed by you, right? A hoarse voice rang out, and a sharp sword intent instantly swept the entire area. The other figure had a head full of white hair, wearing a black robe and a powerful aura. He stared at the Little Hu beside Bu Fong. The Heavenly Star Arctic Fox is also here. Saves me a lot of time. A light laugh rang out. That black-robed man said, raising his hair, let me introduce ourselves. The two of us are the elite trial takers of this nether prison's Son of Heaven trial. We are the younger generation of the nether prison's sword demon clan, the man said. After saying that, his gaze locked onto Bu Fong's body. You killed the nether prison's trial takers. The Lord in charge of the trial's order is very angry, so he sent us to get rid of you and maintain order. Are you ready? The man chuckled, then grinned. Opening his mouth, he reached his hand into his mouth, slowly pulling out a long sword that emitted a bright light. The hidden abdomen sword. The sword light was sharp, tearing through the air. Suddenly, a loud burp interrupted the serious atmosphere created by the two of them. Bu Fong looked at Foxy, and he immediately noticed that Foxy had opened her mouth and let out a sharp screech at the two nether prison experts who were tearing through the mist. Boom! Boom! In the next instant, 2 cannons rang out. Then, 2 beams of golden flowing light shot towards the 2 nether prison's sword demon clan's experts in the distance. Boom! In an instant, the 2 experts were engulfed by the flames, as if there was a small mushroom cloud rising up. Little Hu furrowed his brows. Bu Fong, on the other hand, had a face of speechlessness. After eating the bursting pissing meatball, this Little Hu became a fox-shaped cannon. Chapter 1152. Bu Fong furrowed his brows. The nether prison's experts had already infiltrated to such an extent. God Vanishing Mountain was, after all, a forbidden land in Earth Prison. It was as if it had completely become the back garden of the nether prison's experts. These nether prison experts could come and go as they pleased. According to the words of the 2 people who were hit by Little Hu's energy cannon, they should have received instructions from the nether prison's higher-ups. This also meant that within God Vanishing Mountain, there were still peak nether prison experts spying on them. Perhaps the entire God Vanishing Mountain had become a training ground for the nether prison experts. To Bu Fong, this was not good news. It could very possibly make it more difficult for him to obtain the Spring of Life. However, Bu Fong also had some doubts in his heart. No matter if it was attacking the Heaven Chief Realm or the God Vanishing Mountain's training, the nether prison seemed to have become more and more active. He did not know if it was recently or if it had always been this active. Of course, Bu Fong did not mind. There was still a supreme existence sleeping within God Vanishing Mountain. Even if the sky collapsed, there would be a tall one holding it up. Hence, the safety of God Vanishing Mountain was not something that Bu Fong needed to worry about. Boom! Boom! Little Hu ate 2 bursting pissing meatballs and spat out 2 cannonballs. The speed was extremely fast, causing the two nether prison experts to be hit before they could even react. The explosion rang out in the air, the flames swallowing everything. A strong gale spread out from the air, turning into waves of ripples as it spread out. The power of this explosion seemed to be even stronger than the explosion of the bursting pissing meatball. Swoosh! The water in the seven-colored pool rippled as it was blown by the hurricane, and the ripples spread out in circles. Rubbing Little Who's head, Bufong was also a little surprised. This Shao by Fox being able to spit out the bursting pissing meatball after eating it. It seemed to be quite extraordinary. Ryup, a sharp sword energy tore through the air, giving off a sharp sound as though it was rubbing against the air. He looked up at the sky, where the aftermath of the explosion had dissipated. There, the shock waves of the explosion dissipated, revealing two figures. His gray hair fluttered in the wind, and his figure was in a sorry state. The eyes of the two nether prison experts turned fierce. In their eyes, Bufong's cultivation was merely at the 3-star true immortal realm. To him, this level of cultivation was no different from an ant. But they were in such a sorry state just because of the two energy balls that the Heavenly Star Arctic Fox had spat out. According to the records, the Heavenly Star Arctic Fox should not have such lethality at all. But why? This puzzled the two nether prison experts. The two of them were a bit stupefied because the power of that energy ball was extremely terrifying and had almost killed them. However, it was not a big deal. They had blocked a wave of attacks that exceeded their expectations. In the future, they would not be attacked like this again. A truly powerful swordsman would never make the same mistake twice. The black nether energy on the nether prison expert, who had pulled out a long sword from his throat, suddenly spread out, turning into a plume of smoke that soared into the sky. In the next instant, his feet stepped on the air, shooting out. The pitch-black sword light suddenly tore through, as though it was going to split the heavens and earth apart. It turned into a black line, slashing straight at Bufong's head. Swishing sounds of sword energy filled the air, creating a berserk wind. The hairs on Little Who's body stood on end. Bufong furrowed his brows, the vermilion robe on his body also fluttering from the sword energy. Seeing that the sword light was getting closer and closer, he let out a sigh of relief. His hand shook, and an explosive pissing meatball instantly appeared. He slowly stuffed the golden explosive pissing meatball into Little Who's mouth. Then, Bufong raised his head, looking at the sword light that was slashing straight at him. Actually not running. Seeking death? That nether prison expert coldly laughed. This ant should have been frightened by his sword energy. Since that was the case, then he would let him experience true death. As though it was falling from the sky, the sword energy suddenly sped up, rumbling as it resounded. The hairs on Little Who's body stood on end. However, after being stuffed with an explosive pissing meatball by Bufong, his small eyes blinked, and he still seriously swallowed the explosive pissing meatball. In front of delicious food and danger, he chose delicious food. A bird's cry rang out. Then, the red and white vermilion robe on Bufong's body changed. It had turned completely scarlet red, like a ball of raging fire. The flaming wings on his back spread out, with flaming feathers fluttering. The instant they rose, scarlet red scattered. That nether prison expert gave a light cry of surprise. He didn't think that Bufong actually didn't plan to escape, but actually wanted to fight. You think you can block it? A mere 3-star, true immortal realm. A roar rang out. That voice came from afar, and as the sword light slashed over, it seemed to reach Bufong's ears in an instant. The sword light brought with it a tearing feeling, causing the skin on Bufong's face to feel a little cold. However, he didn't care. Looking at that roaring man, he slowly raised one hand. The other hand rubbed Little Who's head. With a gulp, Little Who swallowed the explosive pissing meatball, burping. Boom! A loud sound rang out as the sword light completely slashed down, accompanied by the laughter of that nether prison expert. I'm a genius disciple of the nether prison sword demon bloodline. Even a half-step saint expert doesn't dare to take a sword from me. You were just a 3-star true immortal realm ant. Where did your courage come from? Disdain, contempt, and surging killing intent surged out. It was as though he wanted to tear Bu Fong into pieces. It was like a raging wave in a vast ocean, instantly crashing down. As for Bu Fong, his expression did not change. He still only raised a palm. His palm was crystal clear, his fingers long and slender. Just like that, it met that sword light. In an instant, the wind and waves were calm. The flaming wings on the back of the vermilion robe slightly flapped, and flaming feathers fluttered. Bu Fong slightly raised his head, expressionlessly looking at that nether prison expert in front of him. The long sword was grasped in his hand, unable to advance or retreat. That nether prison expert's eyes slightly shrank, as though he was in a trance for a moment. The power of his sword was incomparably terrifying. Basically, it could completely kill this ant with one sword. However, what happened? His sword strike was so easily received by Yifutian. Could it be this guy in front of him was pretending to be a pig to eat a tiger? His eyes turned with difficulty, locking onto Bu Fong's body. He found that Bu Fong was looking at him expressionlessly. His heart suddenly jumped. He saw Bu Fong's other hand gently pat Little Hu's head, and Little Hu instantly scurried onto Bu Fong's shoulder. The white fox tail gently swayed, scratching Bu Fong's face. Little Hu spit on him. Bu Fong said. His voice was very calm, but within this calmness, there was a tinge of excitement. Little Hu seemed to understand Bu Fong's meaning. His eyes suddenly lit up. In the next instant, he opened his mouth, aiming at that nether prison expert. That expert was stunned once again. In the next instant, his hair stood on end. Damn it! With an angry curse, this nether prison expert loosened his grip on the long sword without hesitation. He did not know why his sword did not kill Bu Fong, but this was not the main point. He only knew that if he did not escape, he would be the one dead. That strange heavenly star Arctic fox was going to spit again. However, even if he turned around in time to escape, he shockingly discovered that behind him, a terrifying energy instantly appeared. A huge explosion rang out. A terrifying wave of energy blew out. Bu Fong felt as though he had been pushed back by a huge recoil, causing him to take a small step back. The golden flowing light tore through the void, shooting out. It turned into a spinning golden energy ball, smashing onto that nether prison expert's junior. His continuously spinning. That nether prison expert's black robe was suddenly torn apart, his body being twisted into a bloody mess. He was blasted away by the huge impact. After flying far away, there was a huge explosion. This explosion caused Bu Fong to involuntarily let out a breath. Shao Bai Fox, with the explosive pissing meatball, the effect was unexpectedly good. The corner of Bu Fong's mouth twitched. He unexpectedly seemed to have picked up a treasure in God Vanishing Mountain. If he fed that perishing pot to this Shao Bai Fox, Bu Fong narrowed his eyes, glancing at the thin and delicate Little Hu. Thinking about it, he decided to forget about it. That thing, eating it might cause him to explode to death. This was not what Bu Fong wanted to see. The flames slowly dissipated, and a small mushroom cloud rose into the sky. A nether prison expert was killed just like that. The remaining nether prison expert froze on the spot. In the next instant, his thoughts moved. The 3 long swords on his back suddenly came out of their sheaths, and a clanging sound rang out. The sky full of sword light seemed to have turned into a sword net, sweeping and covering the area in front of him. He looked at Bu Fong with incomparable vigilance. Although this fellow's cultivation was that of an ant, his methods were heaven-defying. He had to be cautious. Otherwise, he would be like that fellow from before killed. Just when Bu Fong was hesitating whether to feed this Little Hu a few more explosive pissing meatballs, Little Hu suddenly opened his mouth, letting out a sharp cry. That cry was ear-piercing, forming a formless ripple that spread out, covering the entire peak of God Vanishing Mountain. Boom! Then, a familiar, terrifying aura suddenly spread out. That 7-colored pool suddenly surged, and the huge beast claw that had sunk into it once again appeared. In just an instant, it covered the sky, suddenly heading towards the nether prison expert who was activating the 3 long swords. It instantly slapped down. The latter had just reacted. The sword light swept out, attacking that beast claw, but it did not move it in the slightest. The cultivation of the owner of this beast claw had definitely reached the Saint Realm. God Vanishing Mountain was a forbidden land of Earth Prison, known as the Forbidden Zone of Life. How could it be an undeserved reputation? The sword light shattered, and the 3 long swords were directly smashed into scrap metal by that claw. That 3-fingered claw suddenly clenched tightly. That nether prison expert was forcefully crushed. In the end, he was dragged into the 7-colored pool. Bufong sucked in a breath, lightly patting the little who was still screaming. The latter's screeching suddenly stopped. Little Who reached out his claw and licked it, revealing a human-like smugness on his face. Then he waved his foxtail at Bufong, dashing into the distance, signaling Bufong to follow. Bufong's eyes lit up. This Little Who wanted to bring him to find the spring of life? Bufong did not hesitate. The vermilion robe returned to its red and white color, taking a step forward to follow. In the boundless void, a figure suddenly opened his tightly shut eyes. In that instant, it was as if there were tens of thousands of sword lights shooting out from his body, continuously spreading out. The void was sliced into pieces. Asu and Ameng are dead. With their strength, it's impossible for them to die without even being able to escape. That expert seemed to be a little angry, his gaze as sharp as a sword. Opening his mouth, he let out a long roar. In the next instant, his figure suddenly tore open the boundless void, entering a forbidden land of Nether Prison. There was a forbidden land in Nether Prison called the Immeasurable Cave, which allowed one to pass through the various forbidden lands. Those genius disciples of Nether Prison had entered God Vanishing Mountain through the Immeasurable Cave. And now, this angry expert in the void also planned to enter God Vanishing Mountain. Originally, out of respect for that person in God Vanishing Mountain, he did not want to make a move. However, 2 geniuses of the Sword Demon clan had fallen in God Vanishing Mountain, so he had no choice but to make a move. Revenge had to be taken. Heaven Chief Realm. Today's Heaven Chief Realm was becoming more and more dilapidated, and everyone was panicking. Although the Realm Lord had constantly appeared to make everyone feel at ease. However, looking at the withering Heaven Tree, everyone in Heaven Chief Realm was still very terrified. In a mortal chef little store, Realm Lord Dit sat on a chair, his beard unshaven, his entire person looking a little dispirited. Nearly half a month had passed, and he did not know if Bufong had found the spring of life. Heaven Chief Realm had already reached its limit and could not hold on any longer. The seal on the Nether Prison City wall on the other side of the Heaven Nether Bridge had begun to loosen, and the Bronze Gate was about to open. The Nether Prison experts would soon be able to attack Heaven Chief Realm. If the Heaven Tree continued to wither, Heaven Chief Realm would definitely be destroyed. Realm Lord Dit became more and more desperate. Lord Go lay in a corner of the restaurant, opening his sleepy eyes and yawning. Then, he slowly stood up, shaking his body. Glancing at Realm Lord Dit, he snorted. In the next instant, Lord Go raised his exquisite dog paw, fiercely slashing in the void, tearing open a crack. Striding like a cat, he entered it. Bufong, that kid hasn't returned yet. Looks like it's time for me, Lord Go, to sell a favor to that crazy woman. Chapter 1153. Little Who's speed was very fast, jumping through the dense forest, turning into a bygone. However, Bufong's mental force was very strong, so it was not difficult for him to catch up to Little Who's figure. Very quickly, he caught up to Little Who's speed. A human and a fox traversed through the valley. Bufong was a little excited in his heart, looking around. As Little Who moved forward, the life energy in the air became denser and denser. This kind of energy made Bufong understand that he should be getting closer to the spring of life. There was definitely an array set up on this God-vanishing mountain peak. Because the spring of life's energy seemed to be restrained by the array. As they moved forward, it would slowly burst forth. Under normal circumstances, the powerful life energy contained in the spring of life should be able to easily spread throughout the entire God-vanishing mountain peak. As time flowed, walking on the rugged path, as the surrounding trees became more and more lush, Bufong seemed to be able to feel that when he took a deep breath, there would be a dense life energy burrowing into his nose and mouth. There was a slight sweetness that made his mind clear. This was the spring of life, a saint-grade immortal material. It could even be said that it was more precious than a saint-grade immortal material like the seed of the heaven tree. Suddenly, Xiaobai stopped moving forward. Its foxtail swayed, pointing at a small hole in front of Bufong. Bufong stopped in his tracks and looked at the hole in front of him with a puzzled expression. The hole was not big, and dense life energy was spreading out from within. Furthermore, there was a sparkling liquid constantly dripping down from the hole. That was the low-grade version of the spring of life. Bufong walked to the hole, touching that slightly cold water droplet. A hint of light flashed across his eyes. He looked towards the entrance of the cave. Bufong lightly let out a breath, making his mind highly concentrated. Very quickly, his ears moved, and he heard the extremely clear sound of water dripping. The spring of life was inside. Bufong was pleasantly surprised. He glanced at Little Hu was looking at him with a proud expression. Bufong rubbed Little Hu's head. Little Hu narrowed his eyes and seemed to be very happy. He wagged his foxtail. He turned into a streak of light and entered the cave, disappearing in an instant. Bufong twitched the corner of his mouth. Finding the spring of life was indeed something to be happy about. Bufong took a step forward and walked toward the entrance of the cave. The entrance of the cave was very small. If Bufong wanted to enter, he would have to bend down to barely get in. As soon as he entered the cave, a wave of chilliness assaulted his face. This chill was not bone-piercing and was completely different from the bone-piercing cold wind at the bottom of God-vanishing mountain. Feeling the chill on his face, Bufong felt refreshed. His spirit, energy, and spirit seemed to have recovered greatly. As expected of the spring of life, this kind of aura made him slightly excited. Among them, Bufong did not see Little Hu's figure. However, Bufong was not anxious. The latter was a creature that lived in God-vanishing mountain. It was absolutely impossible for him to get lost. From the way Little Hu brought Bufong here, he definitely came here often. The inside of the cave was very dark. Only a few light rays shone in from the entrance, giving the dark cave some light. Of course, with Bufong's current strength and cultivation, he could already see things in the dark. Thus, it was very easy for him to walk. The path in the cave was naturally not easy to walk. There were strange rocks everywhere. Perhaps only this kind of strange place could nurture a true treasure like the spring of life. The direction in which the cold wind was blowing became more and more intense. Bufong could even feel a wave of water vapor. Slightly anxious, Bufong increased his speed. Xiaobai, who had been lying on Bufong's shoulder, suddenly straightened its body, its compound eyes rolling around. In the next instant, Xiaobai turned into a golden stream of light darting out. As if it had turned into a golden shuttle, it directly disappeared. Bufong stretched out his hand, wanting to catch it. However, the latter's speed was really too fast. Bufong also wanted to cry and laugh. This little guy definitely smelled the aura of the spring of life. That was why he was so impatient. Striding forward, he stepped on the pebbled path, walking forward. Very quickly, he experienced a long period of darkness. Bufong finally felt light in front of him. That's right, white fluorescence filled his vision. This made Bufong understand that in front of him was the spring of life. Without the slightest hesitation, Bufong increased his speed. His toes touched the ground, and his figure suddenly shot out. He rushed into the place where the light was dazzling. Swoosh! Bufong felt that the space in front of him had suddenly widened. Of course, it was not as wide as the underground city of Goddess City. However, he could see that this was a huge cave. According to the previous path, this should be the bottom of the seven-colored pool of God-vanishing mountain. Bufong stood at the entrance of the cave, sweeping his gaze across the area. Beside his ear, there was a wave of splashing sounds. That sound was incomparably turbulent, and the waves came crashing over. In the middle of this cave, there was a huge waterfall. White water flowed down from the top of the waterfall, constantly smashing into the pool, causing waves to spread out. Spring of life. Bufong's breathing stopped, his gaze instantly locking onto that flowing waterfall. That waterfall flowed underground, constantly erupting turbulent waves of air. What spread out from the waves of air was a dense life force. In the pool far away, Little Who was lying there in satisfaction. He stretched out his head, continuously drinking water from the pool. Xiaopi, on the other hand, was leisurely swimming in the pool. His body was faintly flashing with golden light, as though he was transforming. Little Who seemed to have sensed Bufong's figure. He straightened his body, looking at Bufong, softly calling out. The corner of Bufong's mouth slightly rose, expressing his joy. He strode forward. That pool was shrouded in a layer of white water vapor. Even if it was water vapor, it was filled with dense life force. Finally found the spring of life. Bufong took a deep breath, then exhaled. He came to the side of the pool, slowly squatting down. The pool was actually not very big, even smaller than the seven-colored pool. Bufong's hand shook, and instantly, a blue and white porcelain bowl appeared in his hand. Swish! Using the blue and white porcelain bowl, he took a bite of the clear spring of life. Bufong moved his mouth, drinking a mouthful. Gulp! The sweet spring of life instantly flowed into his stomach. It made him feel a wave of coldness. The spring of life was not warm, even a little cold. However, it was incomparably sweet, even a little sweet. However, this kind of sweetness was not the sweetness of saccharin, but a very natural and tranquil taste. A mouthful of spring of life flowed into his stomach, along with a wave of dense life force. This life force circulated in his body, constantly nourishing Bufong's cells. Bufong furrowed his brows. This spring of life was really good. It was much better than the heavenly mountain spirit spring water provided by the system. The dense life force made Bufong feel as though he was about to explode. Of course, this was just an illusion. However, this kind of life force made Bufong a little doubtful. Could this level of spring of life really revive the heaven tree? Bufong's mind flickered. In the next instant, a heaven tree seed appeared in his hand. This heaven tree seed was given to him by Realm Lord Dit. Scooping another bowl of spring of life, he threw the seed into the water. With a thud, the seed sank to the bottom of the bowl, emitting a few bubbles. Gulp! Gulp! However, after the bubbles came out, the seed once again stopped moving, returning to its calm state. Bufong furrowed his brows. He fished out the heaven tree seed from the bowl. The spring of life on the surface was instantly sucked into the seed. It doesn't work? I still can't wake the seed up? Bufong took a deep breath. All of a sudden, Bufong froze. In his perception, the spring of life suddenly emitted a wave of energy. Raising his head in confusion, Bufong looked into the distance. He found within the misty water, a pair of huge dark golden eyes appeared. Huh? Bufong's mind instantly exploded, his entire being incomparably cautious. Now that he didn't have the invincibility of the vermilion robe, he didn't dare to take risks. There was actually a spirit beast in this spring of life. There wasn't an aura that made Bufong feel pressured. However, Bufong didn't relax in the slightest. To be able to live in the spring of life, it was enough to prove the other party's strength. Even if it drank the spring of life every day, its strength could still rise to a terrifying level. What's that? Bufong furrowed his brows, lightly shouting. His voice resounded, actually suppressing the sound of the waterfall by a lot, flowing elegantly in the entire cave. Just as Bufong's voice disappeared after a moment of silence, then a bestial roar rang out. Instantly, a wave of energy surged out, and a terrifying gale almost flipped Bufong over. The vermilion robe fluttered, almost sticking to his body. Xiaobai squatted at the edge of the pool, also softly calling out. Boom! The misty water vapor instantly dispersed. Bufang also clearly saw the owner of the dark golden eyes in the pool. His eyes slightly shrank. Bufang unnoticeably sucked in a breath of cold air. Because on the surface of the spring of life, there was actually a giant white fox standing there. This white fox was really huge. It was about 10 meters tall, and its head almost reached the top of the cave. Previously, it should have been lying down. Now that it was standing, the impact of the waves of energy allowed Bufang to clearly see its appearance. The white fox's body was sparkling, looking very impactful, full of extreme charm. The important thing was the white fox's 9 tails were constantly swaying and swinging, giving people a huge visual shock. When Xiaobai saw that giant 9-tailed white fox, its eyes instantly brightened. With a light leap, it turned into a white flowing light and dashed out. Jumping onto the 9-tailed white fox's head, its small face rubbing against the 9-tailed white fox's head. The giant 9-tailed white fox also gently narrowed its eyes. Bufang was dumbfounded. This 9-tailed white fox's body exploded with an extremely powerful aura. It was definitely not a beast king, but a saint beast. Moreover, looking at its appearance, it seemed to be Xiao Bai's father. This cave of the spring of life seemed to be the white fox's nest. The 9-tailed white fox's gaze swept over Bufang, as if it was a little surprised. Then it opened its mouth. Human, are you here for the spring of life? I can feel that woman's aura on you. The white fox's figure was very gentle, as if it was a scholarly man's voice. Bufang deeply sucked in a breath, opening his mouth to speak. However, that white fox interrupted him. Oh, not only that woman's aura, but there are also many familiar auras. Strange, a human like you is so weak. How can you have so many auras? Let me think, who exactly are there? Forget it. It's been too long. My brain isn't working, and I can't think of anything. But human, my daughter seems to have a good relationship with you. How did you kidnap her? I'm warning you, my daughter is only 3 years old. She doesn't know anything. Humans are the worst. Don't lead her astray. There seems to be the fragrance of sacrificial dishes on your body. Other than sacrificial dishes, there are also many other dishes. Oh, you brat, you have quite a lot of secrets on you. Bufang was speechless as he looked at the huge 9-tailed white fox standing on the spring of life in the distance. Seeing that the latter did not care about him and blabbered on, he immediately understood. This old white fox was a King Chatterbox. Finally, the 9-tailed white fox finished speaking. Finally, its dark golden gaze landed on Bufang's body. Its gaze became extremely sharp, causing Bufang's body to tense up. You want to save the seed in your hand? Then you must use the source water of the spring of life. You can take the spring of life, but the source water of the spring of life. Give up. You will never be able to obtain it in this lifetime. The 9-tailed white fox opened its mouth, as if it was smiling sinisterly. However, just as it finished laughing, its dark golden eyes suddenly narrowed. In the next instant, its eyes suddenly revealed a smear of rage. Mother ***, who dares to harm my wife? The 9-tailed white fox gave a long roar, its 9 white tails sweeping through the air. The sudden convulsion caused Bufang to jump in fright. God vanishing mountain peak. Within the 7-colored pool, a white fox with fur that was whiter than snow, its 6 tails sweeping through the air. One of the 6-tailed fox's claws was seeping with fresh red blood, its aura surging. And in front of the 6-tailed white fox, there was an expert whose entire body was wrapped in a pitch-black flame. In front of this nether prison expert floated a pitch-black heavy sword. On the heavy sword, black flames burned. Chapter 1154. Bufang did not know what was wrong with this huge 9-tailed white fox. The sudden howl almost scared him to death. Bufang expressionlessly looked at this old white fox. The latter's figure moved, suddenly disappearing from its original spot. The next time it appeared, it rushed towards the place where the waterfall was crashing down. It suddenly drilled into it and disappeared. A Baiguang shot over, suddenly landing on Bu Fong's shoulder. Little Hu blinked his eyes, looking at the nine-tailed white fox that left. Then looking at Xiao Bai Fox on his shoulder, Bu Fong was momentarily speechless. Bu Fong did not say anything. He was hesitating. After the nine-tailed white fox left, the place where he was originally standing revealed a whirlpool. The huge whirlpool was spinning. That whirlpool emitted a rich life force, allowing Bu Fong to understand that it was the source of the spring of life. Didn't you say that I would never be able to obtain the source of the spring of life in this lifetime? The corner of Bu Fong's mouth twitched. Looking at that whirlpool, if Bu Fong took advantage of the white fox's absence to obtain the source of the spring of life, it would definitely be easy. However, Bu Fong did not intend to obtain the source of the spring of life, because he knew that the white fox was the guardian of the spring of life. And that old white fox was Little Hu's father. For the sake of Little Hu, Bu Fong would not do anything improper. Forget it. Let's go out and take a look. Bu Fong raised his hand, rubbing Xiao Bai Fox's head as he said softly. Xiao Bai Fox instantly intimately rubbed against Bu Fong's palm. People of Nether Prison, you have crossed the line, the six-tailed fox said coldly. Her voice seemed to have a cold arrogance. Her dark golden eyes stared at the expert in the air, whose body was burning with black flames. Cross the line? The black-robed man sneered. His eyes were cold. He slowly raised his hand and grabbed the sword that was burning with black flames. His aura suddenly erupted. It was as if a terrifying devil had appeared behind him. The dense black flames almost engulfed the heavens. 2 of my Sword Demon Clan's genius disciples died here. How divine that it was you who did it, you coquettish fox. If you accuse me of overstepping my boundaries, why don't you accuse me of overstepping yours? The black-robed man said with a murderous aura. The 6 tails on the back of the six-tailed fox were constantly swaying in the void, producing a violent swishing sound. You deserve to die for coveting my daughter, Six-tailed Fox said coldly. You might not know this, but one of the 2 genius disciples from the Sword Fiend clan is my grandson. The black-robed man said indifferently. He raised his hand and gently tapped the sword with his finger. In an instant, the long sword turned into a pitch-black streak of light and shot towards the six-tailed fox at an extremely fast speed. Even the air seemed to be incinerated at this moment as it continuously shattered. The six-tailed fox let out a long cry, and the entire 7-colored pool began to boil. Raising its claws, it instantly created a sharp storm. The terrifying wind constantly attacked, charging towards that pitch-black longsword. Boom! A heavy sword intent suddenly spread out, tearing that storm apart in an instant. A Heavenly Star Arctic fox that has just entered the Little Saint realm wants to stop me? Perhaps that woman from God Vanishing Mountain would be more likely. Unfortunately, that woman is currently in a deep sleep and can't help you. The black-robed man clasped his hands, looking high and mighty as he said indifferently. Above his head, there was a distortion, as if the will of the great path was surging. Just nice. There's a supreme existence in the Nether Prison that wants the Heavenly Star Arctic fox meat. I'll kill you and use your corpse to exchange for that existence's favor. Also, hand over the person who killed my grandson. Otherwise, I'll kill your daughter as well. The black-robed man said. His voice was incomparably cold, filled with killing intent. Hearing the other party mention her daughter, the six-tailed fox was instantly enraged. It opened its mouth and let out a roar. The 7-colored pool seemed like it was about to explode. You're seeking death. Rumble. The pool exploded, and that huge 6-tailed fox also charged up, its savage claws slapping towards the black-robed man. Ridiculous. Haven't you learned your lesson after losing a claw? As expected of a beast, you should become food on a plate. The black-robed man coldly said. He raised his hand, and the pitch-black longsword immediately shot back into his hand. Buzz, the long sword seemed to tremble. In an instant, it waved, and instantly, Tens of thousands of sword lights spread out. 1, 2, 3. The rays of sword light stacked together and turned into a single sword. Poochie! The six-tailed fox let out a woman's scream. Instantly, it stretched out its claw, and fresh blood spurted out. However, the six-tailed fox did not retreat this time. Its dark golden eyes were filled with savagery as it continued to pounce forward. Opening its mouth wide, it bit towards the black-robed man. "You're crazy, you beast!" With a wave of his finger, the black longsword's flames flourished, instantly turning into a huge fire sword that covered the sky. A terrifying pressure spread out, causing the entire peak of God-Vanishing Mountain to be swept up by a storm. Grabbing the sword hilt, it fiercely waved that huge fire sword that covered the sky. Dark flames burned in the air, causing the air to give off splashing sounds. The six-tailed fox roared ferociously, energy condensing in its mouth. That energy kept sucking in the void, causing it to collapse unceasingly. "Go dot!" the black-robed man roared. The flaming longsword fiercely slashed down on the six-tailed fox's figure. Boom! The energy ball in the six-tailed fox's mouth also exploded out. However, as the flaming longsword slashed down, that energy ball was cut into two halves, continuously splitting to the sides. The flaming longsword continuously slashed down, as though it wanted to cut the six-tailed fox into two halves at the same time. Suddenly, this black-robed expert's hair stood on end, and a wave of coldness suddenly spread out from his feet. It was a loud bang. A huge white claw suddenly drilled out from the seven-colored pool, grabbing that black-robed expert. "Kill my wife? And want to kill my daughter?" Nether Prison's people are really becoming more and more overbearing. "My wife said that you crossed the line, so you crossed the line? What are you refuting for?" The claw grabbed, and the nine tails continuously swept in the air, slapping the air. The nine-tailed white fox's domineering voice resounded through the air. That black-robed expert was a little stunned. However, before he could react, he was ruthlessly smashed onto the ground by the nine-tailed fox. Boom! The entire God-Vanishing Mountain seemed to violently shake at this moment. That black-robed expert's entire body seemed to have been smashed to the point that all the bones in his body seemed to be broken. However, after he slowly stood up, the broken bones in his body slowly recovered. Heavenly Star, Nine-Tailed Fox. You're a top-grade ingredient. It's said that the God-Vanishing Mountain has a legendary nine-tailed Heavenly Star Arctic Fox. Looking at it now, it's indeed not bad. If that lord knew, he would definitely like it a lot. With a wave of clamor, the black longsword suddenly floated in front of this black-robed man. Simawin leaped up, landing on the black sword. Instantly, he rode the sword, charging into the sky. He floated in front of the huge nine-tailed white fox's dark gold eyes. There are 5 fellows in hell that you cannot offend. A crazy woman, a black dog, a rotten old man, a demon girl, and a monster. However, this does not include you, this white fox. The black-robed man lightly said. The nine-tailed white fox was instantly enraged. This nether prison brat was looking down on him, the nine-tailed white fox. With a ripping sound, the claws instantly tore out, ferociously slapping down. However, this time, the sword light swept out. Simawin's figure instantly fled into the distance. His eyes coldly looked at the nine-tailed fox. "Hand over the human who killed my grandson, and give me the six-tailed fox. Then, I'll let your daughter and you," Simawin coldly said. "This is my last warning to you. Nether prison is not something that a bastard like you can offend." However, before Simawin had finished speaking, the nine-tailed fox roared. A scarlet-red energy ball instantly shot out from its mouth. With a loud rumble, it tore through the air, blasting towards Simawin. F***CK, your grandma. This daddy wants to kill your wife. Are you going to hand her over? Are the nether prison people all pigs? The nine-tailed fox roared, its figure as though it had teleported, appearing in front of Simawin. Its two claws suddenly slapped down, as though it was going to kill a mosquito. However, very quickly, the nine-tailed fox felt that something was wrong. Above the black-robed man's head, a wave of terrifying energy rippled down, turning into a light beam that covered his body. Nether Prison's Will of the Great Path. The nine-tailed white fox's dark golden eyes suddenly shrank, its face slightly changing. 9 Revolution, little saint. The nine-tailed white fox's nostrils widened as it said, "It's too late to regret now." The black-robed man, Simoen, laughed coldly, very satisfied with the nine-tailed fox's surprise. In the next instant, he stretched out his hand, grabbing towards the wide-open mouth. After a while, a silver short sword was slowly pulled out by him. With a swoosh, Bufong's figure jumped out of the seven-colored pool. Looking around, Bufong suddenly understood. As expected, the spring of life was at the bottom of this seven-colored pool. Raising his head in the sky, there were 2 huge foxes facing off against a black-robed expert. That expert's aura was too strong. Even if Bufong had the invincibility of the vermilion robe, his heart still palpitated. 6-tailed fox. 9-tailed fox. Are they your parents? Bufong turned his head to look at Little Hu. Little Hu obediently nodded his head. Bufong suddenly understood. Looking at that stance, Little Hu's father and mother seemed to be unable to defeat that human. That fellow's strength was extremely terrifying. Bufong did not know what level that person's cultivation was, or how it was compared to Lord Ghost. However, Bufong knew that the other party was definitely not a good person. Could it be that he was also here for the spring of life? With a flicker of his mind, Bufong took out the bursting, pissing beef meatballs. If the other party was really here for the spring of life, Bufong had to be on guard. He had to prepare a backup plan. The perishing pot could only be used as a last resort. After all, its power was too terrifying. But now Bufong had a new backup plan. He fed Little Hu the bursting, pissing beef meatballs one by one. Little Hu did not refuse any of them. She ate them one by one, burping nonstop. Almost half of the stock was stuffed into Little Hu's stomach. Little Hu excitedly expressed that she could eat them. However, Bufong did not dare to let her continue eating. This Little Hu was still young. Perhaps he did not know what to do. If she was stuffed to death by the bursting, pissing beef meatballs, that would be terrible. So, Bufong stopped while he was ahead. Little fellow, your father and mother might not be able to defeat him. When the time comes, I'll bring you up. You just spit on that guy's face, understand? Bufong carefully instructed. He always felt guilty, as if he was trying to trick a wimpy kid. Foxy turned to look at the 6-tailed fox, whose claws were bleeding profusely, and called out softly. The 6-tailed fox's head instantly turned, looking at Little Hu lovingly. Bufong knew that the 6-tailed fox should be the owner of the beast claw hidden in the 7-colored pool. Nodding at the latter, Bufong's face was solemn. The 6-tailed fox, on the other hand, gave Bufong a deep look with a meaningful look. The peak of the little saint could attract the will of the great path to bless his body. His strength was extremely terrifying. The 9-tailed white fox was also a little afraid. After all, the other party was blessed by the Nether Prison's will of the great path. That kind of plane's will of the great path was too strong. Other than the 5 fellows that the other party was afraid of, the 9-tailed white fox might not be his opponent. Suddenly, the 9-tailed white fox saw Bufong. Her dark golden eyes instantly narrowed. Look, that human is the culprit who killed your grandson. The 9-tailed white fox shouted at the top of her lungs. Simoen, who had just pulled out the hidden abdomen sword, instinctively looked over. His sharp gaze seemed to transform into a terrifying sword intent, shooting out. Bufong's face darkened. Damn it, is this a fox or a pig? Bufong was speechless. He had wanted to help the 9-tailed white fox trick this Nether Prison expert. In the end, however, in the instant the Nether Prison expert turned his gaze, the 9-tailed white fox moved. A murderous aura suddenly burst forth from his dark golden eyes. The 9 fox tails were like sharp swords as they slashed at the black-robed expert. Chapter 1155. The nine tails seemed to have turned into sharp, long swords, instantly slashing down from the sky, tearing apart the void. The terrifying ripples that rose up were shocking. The cultivation of a nine-tailed white fox was very strong, and it was not weak at all. An intense, air-piercing sound rang out, causing people's hearts to tremble. That nether prison expert obviously did not expect that this nine-tailed white fox would be so sinister, actually using a human to divert his attention. However, this nether prison expert naturally would not be so easily tricked. The silver longsword was wrapped with a wave of heavenly will. In the next instant, Si Mawan released his hand. A buzzing sound rang out. The silver longsword instantly shot out, directly tearing apart the sky. It was like a silver spear that wanted to pierce through the void, slashing towards the nine-tailed white fox's nine tails. Boom! The silver longsword and the nine-tailed fox's tails collided. A terrifying explosion rang out. Ripples spread out, causing the entire god-vanishing mountain peak to violently shake. The nine-tailed fox's huge figure slightly retreated a step, letting out a long howl. Si Mawan rose into the air, the silver longsword quickly returning, constantly shuttling around his body. In the next instant, his sword fingers pointed, and the silver longsword suddenly shot towards the nine-tailed white fox in the distance. Its speed was extremely fast, so fast that people's eyes could not even catch it. The nine-tailed white fox howled, its figure suddenly leaping. Its nine tails tore through the air, shifting to the side. The sound of sonic booms continued to ring out. That silver longsword seemed to have its own consciousness, constantly chasing after the nine-tailed fox, causing the latter to be in a somewhat sorry state. Bufang narrowed his eyes as he watched. Seeing the nine-tailed white fox fall into a disadvantageous position, his brows slightly furrowed. Although this white fox had almost tricked him, the other party was also trying to kill this nether prison expert. Thus, it was pardonable. Since that was the case, it was about time for him to make his move. His mind flickered. Xiaopi, who was lying on his shoulder, seemed to know what Bufang was thinking. With a ripping sound, it shot out like a golden spear, quickly becoming huge in front of Bufang. Bufang leaped up, half-squatting on Xiaopi's back. Xiaobai, who was held in Bufang's arms. In the distance, the eyes of the six-tailed fox, whose claws were injured and bleeding profusely, suddenly narrowed. It swept its tail over and blocked in front of them. There seemed to be doubt in its eyes. Naturally, she could not let her daughter take the risk. That nether prison Sima Wen's sword intent was too strong. It was not something that Bufang and her daughter could handle. Besides, her daughter was only 3 years old and didn't have any combat power. If Bufang dragged her out, wouldn't that be sending her to her death? This was the worry of a mother. Bufang was also aware of this point. Don't worry, little who won't die. I guarantee it with my life. Bufang said faintly, raising his head to look at the six-tailed fox. A ripple seemed to flash through the six-tailed fox's dark golden eyes. Then, his tail gradually moved. The corners of Bufang's mouth twitched. He nodded at the six-tailed fox, grateful for its trust. In the next instant, Xiaopi under his feet suddenly shot out, turning into a jet of golden light. Its speed was not any slower than that silver longsword. Sima Wen seemed to feel a wave of attack coming. With a glance, he found that it was actually that weak human carrying the underage Xiao Bai Hu rushing toward him. A moth flying into a flame? Courting death? Sima Wen said disdainfully. With his cultivation, a single yawn would be enough to kill this human to the point where he couldn't be more dead. His combat power and strength were definitely not what this human could imagine. The gap between the true immortal realm was huge, not to mention the saint realm. The difference between each realm and the saint realm was like the difference between heaven and earth. Bufang half-squatted on Xiaopi's back. The wind blew, causing his vermilion robe to flutter. Holding little Hu in his arms, he gently rubbed little Hu's head. The latter instantly burped. His eyes narrowed. Then, Xiaopi's figure dashed through the void. Sima Wen did not put Bufang in his eyes at all. 3-star, true immortal realm. What kind of plaything is that? He flicked his finger. Instantly, 3 pitch-black sword energies shot out. The sword demon lineage mainly cultivated sword techniques. At Simawin's Saint Realm, every movement of his could be used as a sword. With a ripping sound, the 3 sword energies were extremely sharp. The six-tailed fox's eyes were fixed on them. If something went wrong, she would risk her life to attack. However, in the next instant, she froze. Xiaopi's speed was extremely fast. Carrying Bu Fong and Little Hu, it seemed to have turned into a jet of golden light. After swimming in the spring of life for a while, this little fellow seemed to have become much stronger. At least, Xiaopi's speed had increased by leaps and bounds compared to before. Ripping, Xiaopi's figure dashed forward, turning into a golden, lightning bolt in the void. It directly dodged the 3 sword energies and rushed out of the sword intense blockade. It spun around Simawin at high speed. This was what Bufong had arranged for Xiaopi. At this moment, Bufong stood up. Stroking Little Hu's head, he narrowed his eyes and stared at Simawin. He gently exhaled. Facing an existence at the peak of the little saint at such a close distance, Bufong felt enormous pressure. This pressure did not come from an external force. With the system, no pressure could affect him. This pressure was what Bufong wanted. The peak of the little saint was like an insurmountable mountain. The pressure was majestic. However, this did not stop Bufong from continuing to attack. Gently stroking Little Hu, Bufong grinned and said, "It's time, Little Hu. Kill him." Bufong's faint voice was instantly swallowed by the wild wind. However, Little Hu's eyes suddenly lit up. The next moment, he opened his mouth. Energy gathered in his mouth. Huh? Simawin suddenly felt energy gathering by his side. Turning his head, he saw the human holding the underage white fox, aiming at him. What did he want? This kind of underdeveloped white fox could shoot spirit beast bullets? Even the 6-tailed fox and the 9-tailed fox were bewildered. What did this human want their daughter to do? Xiao Bai was indeed underage and couldn't shoot spirit beast bullets. However, she could shoot explosive meatballs. Fire, Bufong called softly. Then ta-ta-ta-ta-ta, ta-ta-ta-ta. Xiao Bai's mouth instantly shot out golden energy balls one after another, his head moving up and down. A whistling sound suddenly rang out. Numerous energy balls shot out from the void and shot toward Simawin. Because they were very close, in just half a breath's time, the golden energy balls approached Simawin. What's that? Simawin furrowed his brows. Spirit beast bullets? It didn't look like it. It was accompanied by other fragrances. Fragrances? What the hell? Raising his hand, he flicked his finger. Instantly, a wisp of sword energy shot out. A 3-star true immortal realm expert and a Xiao Bai's fox were nothing in his eyes. A wisp of sword energy could destroy everything. Boom, boom. However, in the next instant, his eyes shrank. This was because he discovered that the instant his sword chi came into contact with the golden energy ball, it suddenly exploded. Buzz, the instantaneous explosion stunned him a little. The power of that explosion wasn't ordinary. Moreover, it also contained a wave of energy that he was very familiar with. That energy wave seemed to be the will of the Great Path. A moment later, Simawin realized that he was covered by many energy balls. Rumble. Boom. The sound of explosions reverberated unceasingly. Flames continued to explode. 1 energy ball exploded. 2 energy balls exploded. Small mushroom clouds soared up into the sky. More and more flames rose. In one breath, all the energy balls were blasted away. Little Hu couldn't help but open his mouth, sticking out his tongue with a dumbfounded face. He nodded too much, a little dazed. Rubbing the latter's head, the corners of Bu Fong's mouth rose. The 9-tailed fox was dumbfounded. That's his daughter? Damn, she's almost catching up to his father. The 6-tailed fox's dark golden eyes flashed with a strange light. Xiao Bai's fox could do this? Take advantage of his weakness and kill him. If I don't take action now, when will I? Bufong looked at the dumbfounded 9-tailed fox, furrowing his brows. The 9-tailed fox reacted immediately. A long whistle rang out. The fox's tails smashed down. Boom, boom, boom. 9 tails smashed down at the same time, creating thousands of holes on the ground. A muffled groan resounded. On the ground, Simawin's body was a little damaged. Boom! Like a cannonball, he leaped up. Simawin gasped for breath. His face was dark and gloomy. He had been tricked by a 3-star, true, immortal realm ant. That explosion had almost blown him up. The 9-tailed fox's attack had further injured him. The robe on his body had already been torn apart, revealing his plump muscles. Courting death, Simawin furiously roared. In the next instant, he raised his hand and pinched. Poochie! The 9-tailed fox miserably howled. His huge figure staggered several steps. On his huge figure, a large hole had actually been pierced by the silver longsword. The large hole was badly mutilated, and fresh blood dripped down. All of you must die. Simawin held the silver longsword as he roared. However, just as his words fell, the enraged 9-tailed fox's claw slammed down, slamming Simawin into the ground. The entire god-vanishing mountain peak seemed to be collapsing. Tens of thousands of densely packed silver lights shot out from the spot where the 9-tailed fox had slammed down. Terrifying sword energy constantly tore through the void. Simawin soared into the sky, his body seemingly transforming into a sword intent, carrying the nether prison's will of the heavenly path. It was extremely terrifying. With a ripping sound, it turned into a thread, shooting towards the 9-tailed fox. With a poochie sound, the 9-tailed fox's shoulder once again exploded. Blood rained down. An enraged roar rang out. However, Simawin's body, which had transformed into a sword, did not stop there. Instead, it tore through the sky. It shot towards Bufong and Little Hu in the distance, as if it wanted to completely kill Bufong and Little Hu. This kind of ant, one sword was enough. He had actually been tricked by 2 ants. This crime was unforgivable. Simawin's eyes were extremely dark. Bufong's brows tightly furrowed. His mind flickered. In the next instant, a silver lotus pot appeared in his hand. Buzz, a terrifying fluctuation spread out from the lotus pot, and the void seemed to distort. A white flame burned under the pot, the heat spreading out. The moment the perishing pot appeared, whether it was the 9-tailed fox or the 6-tailed fox, their hearts shook. Simawin's hair stood on end. This kind of fluctuation was definitely a great killing weapon. This ant actually had such a great killing weapon. Little Hu's eyes sparkled as she stared at the perishing pot. Although she was drooling, she was very clear that this thing, she couldn't eat it because she was still young. Bufong's face was a little pale. The moment the perishing pot appeared, it began to crazily absorb the mental force in his mind. Divine dragon roar, vermilion bird long cry, black tortoise roar, white tiger roar. At this moment, his spirit sea was surging with great waves. The perishing pot in his hand bloomed with extreme radiance, as if it had become the focus of heaven and earth at this moment. Outside God Vanishing Mountain, Goddess City, Fong Fong Ice Cream shopped the female King Biliuo, who was holding a bowl of ice cream and eating happily, suddenly furrowed her brows. This fluctuation, that little Chef Bufong, is causing trouble again? God Vanishing Mountain belly inside a piece of 10,000-year-old ice within the ice coffin. There was a beautiful figure in deep sleep. Suddenly, this frozen figure opened her eyes, and the 10,000-year-old ice began to crack. With a ripping sound above the 7-colored pool, suddenly, a crack was torn open. Then a black dog slowly walked out of the crack with enchanting cat-like steps. Chapter 1156. The Perishing Pot. This thing was Bufong's current trump card. Of course, Bufong would make more death food tools in the future. The main reason was that although the perishing pot was strong, its power was basically fixed because it had fused with the will of the Great Path, and there was little room for further improvement. Even if Bufong's cultivation base improved in the future, it would be difficult for the perishing pot to become more powerful. Buzz Bufong's face turned slightly pale. His mental force hadn't fully recovered from the last time he used the perishing pot. It was mainly because Bufong had been constantly studying cooking these days, especially the sacrificial dish. It had consumed a lot of his energy, so his mental force was still in a state of deficit. Forcibly using the perishing pot now was a great burden for him, and it might even damage his spirit sea. Therefore, Bufong refused to use the perishing pot. However, Sima Wen had transformed into a sword, and his cultivation base was at the peak of the Little Saint realm. Even if Bufong used the perishing pot, he might not be able to kill him. At most, he could buy him some time. After all, Bufong had promised the six-tailed fox that he would protect Little Hu. The perishing pot spun in Bufong's hand. Hot air surged out of it, turning into waves of wind that blew at Bufong's hair. Bufong's eyes narrowed. In the distance, a sword light came, shattering everything in its path. Bufong took a deep breath. The mental force in his mind flowed away like water falling into the sea. The next moment, his pupils constricted. He was going to throw the perishing pot out. However, just as Bufong was about to throw the perishing pot, his movements suddenly froze. Because Bufong felt a familiar aura. A black dog slowly walked up from below with enchanting cat-like steps and appeared in front of Bufong in a flash. It squinted at Bufong. "Bufong boy, are you going to use this thing again? Although this thing of yours is powerful, you still need to know how to control yourself. Otherwise, I'll be hurting myself as well." The Lord Go's gentle and magnetic voice suddenly resounded in the void. Bufong was stunned. He stopped moving, and the perishing pot that he was about to throw out was taken back. Lord Go? Bufong was slightly taken aback. He did not seem to notice the Lord Go's presence here. "Didn't you say that you won't come to God Vanishing Mountain?" Bufong asked in confusion. Lord Go was still squinting at Bufong. "Oh, Lord Go, I was afraid that you would be kept here by that crazy woman. The Lord Go is here to save you," Lord Go said righteously. Bufong was stunned. Just as Bufong and Lord Go were chatting, the sound of the void tearing rang out. A moment later, a sword cry rang out, as if it was about to tear the void apart. Bufong's eyes shrank. "Die!" Sima Wen roared, aiming at Bufong. As for the fat dog in front of Bufong, although it looked a little familiar, it would be better to kill it together. Turning one's body into a sword, cutting down all things. The sword energy was oppressive, constantly pouring out. The faces of the nine-tailed fox and the six-tailed fox had already changed. However, when Bufong took out the perishing pot, they were slightly taken aback. Obviously, they could feel the terror of the perishing pot. However, what surprised them even more was the fat black dog that appeared in the void, strutting its elegant cat-like steps. It looked a little familiar, but they did not know it. The bloody holes on the nine-tailed fox's body were slowly healing. The Little Saint Realm's recovery ability was extremely strong. The six-tailed fox also stared at Lord Go, a hint of disbelief in her dark golden eyes. The Little Saint of the Nether Prison's Sword Demon Clan? Lord Go tilted his head and murmured in a gentle and magnetic voice when he saw Sima Wen slashing at him with a sword. Sima Wen did not know Lord Go. His eyes were cold as he turned his body into a sword and slashed at him. Lord Go's dog eyes suddenly burst out with a sharp light. The next moment, with a bark, terrible nether energy burst out of his body. His body suddenly grew bigger, and the shadow of a head appeared on his neck, opening its mouth and roaring. The pressure immediately burst forth. The exquisite dog paw rose. Thousands of strands of nether energy gathered and finally turned into a huge dog paw that blotted out the sky. The dog paw slapped at Sima Wen, who had turned into a sword. The Lord Go revealed his cultivation base, which startled Sima Wen. It seemed a little familiar, but he did not think too much about it, and still slashed down with his sword. Faster and faster, it turned into a blazing silver light. Boom! The dog paw slapped that blazing silver light, and an explosion suddenly rang out. In the distance, the six-tailed fox sucked in a breath of cold air, its eyes filled with respect. The nine-tailed fox looked as if she had seen a ghost. If she still could not recognize the fat black dog's identity, it would be a waste of his title as the holy beast of hell. It's actually that dog. His injuries have recovered. The six-tailed fox muttered, "This dog, how dare he come to God Vanishing Mountain?" The two foxes had obviously seen through Lord Go's identity. Boom! An explosion rang out. A loud explosion rang out. Simawin's figure flew out like a cannonball, smashing into God Vanishing Mountain. It caused God Vanishing Mountain to tremble. Lord Go stood proudly in the air, his body becoming huge. His entire body seemed to be burning with pitch-black hellfire. The flames burned, causing the air to constantly twist. Simawin flipped his body and stood up. Broken rocks rolled down as a look of shock appeared in his eyes. He raised his head, his hand holding a silver longsword as he looked at Lord Go in disbelief. You're that Earth Prison dog." Simawin sucked in a breath of cold air. He had previously said that there were 5 fellows in Earth Prison that he could not provoke, and this dog was one of them. He would never have thought that this dog would actually appear here. Wasn't it said that this dog was injured by the supreme existence of the Netherworld and escaped? That kind of injury, how could it recover so quickly? At that time, because Earth Prison was dissatisfied with the Nether Prison's exploitation, the Lord of the Netherworld, Hades Tenzang, raised his army to attack Nether Prison. Old Hades Tenzang, with his talent and strength, killed the Nether Prison's army and forced them to retreat. In the end, the 9 clans of Nether Prison joined hands to suppress Earth Prison's attack. Then the 9 great figures of the 9 clans made a move, killing old Hades and seriously injuring this black dog. Hades Tenzang guided Earth Prison's heavenly Tao into his body, risking his life to seriously injure 7 experts of the 9 clans. That black dog, on the other hand, was seriously injured and left. Today, this dog actually appeared once again. "Earth Prison dog, you still dare to appear." Simawin coughed out blood, but his face was full of excitement. Lord Dog, who had transformed into a real hell dog, coldly glanced at Sima One with his blood-red eyes. The flames on his body continued to burn. The flames on his body burned continuously, causing the illusionary void to constantly twist. Ha ha ha. Originally, I wanted to lure out that crazy woman from God Vanishing Mountain. I didn't think that this Earth Prison dog would also appear. This is really a pleasant surprise. Simawin laughed crazily. His laughter was somewhat incomprehensible, as if he had gone mad. "Noisy," Lord Go lightly shouted. In the next instant, his figure suddenly disappeared from where he was. When he reappeared, he was already in front of Simawin. A claw swept out. The illusionary void collapsed inch by inch. Boom! Simawin used the silver longsword to block it. A cracking sound rang out. The silver longsword suddenly broke. Simawin's face instantly turned ashen, black blood spurting out of his mouth. That silver longsword was the Sword Demon clan's natal longsword. Being broken like this, Simawin had long been heavily injured. However, Simawin, who had fallen far away, struggled to get up. His mouth coughed out blood, but he was still laughing loudly. "My Nether Prison will conquer the Netherworld, conquer the starry sky, conquer the myriad worlds. You can't stop us." Simawin roared. Lord Go's eyes focused. In the next instant, he opened his mouth, and a pitch-black flame spurted out. Boom! A flame dragon suddenly spurted out from his mouth. The pitch-black flame dragon brought with it a terrifying aura that could destroy everything as it charged towards Simawin. If it hit, Simawin would definitely not have a corpse left. However, just as Lord Go's flame dragon was about to hit Simawin's body, the sky above was suddenly torn apart. A huge longsword smashed down from the illusionary void. That longsword was simple and unadorned, made of bronze. There were mysterious patterns carved on it, and there were even specks of green copper densely covering it. The huge longsword swept across the sky. It suddenly slashed down, and the tip of the sword entered the ground of God, Vanishing Mountain. Lord Go's flame dragon neared, but it was suddenly cut apart by an invisible sword energy. The flame dragon dissipated. A terrifying sword intent pressure spread out. If Simawen's sword intent was a torrential river, then the sword intent contained in this simple and unadorned bronze sword would be a boundless ocean. It was so vast that it almost made people suffocate. Nether Prison's great sage. Lord Go turned into the appearance of a hellhound, floating in front of Buffon. His face was a little solemn as he spoke. Nine-tailed Fox had already brought the six-tailed fox to hide behind Lord Go. They were just little saint. When they met the real great sage, they would be instantly killed. Especially the Nether Prison's great sage. Didn't Simawen say that there was a supreme existence that fancied their fox meat and wanted to bring it to the dining table? Hence, they hurriedly looked for Lord Go to be their backer. Compared to fox meat, dog meat should be more attractive, of course. Although this hellhound was a little unreliable, it still had strength. Simawen laughed, his gaze disdainfully staring at the hellhound Lord Go. His face was full of mockery. That year, your hell army suffered a great defeat, and you, a prodigal dog, still dare to show yourself. The Nether Prison's supreme existence used a supreme secret technique as a reward for your dog's head. Today, you've shown yourself. Simawen laughed. My sword demon lineage's great sage will definitely chop off your dog head. Obtain a supreme secret technique. As his words fell, the bronze sword floating in front of him instantly trembled. The sword energy spread, and an invisible sword intent slashed towards Lord Go. As the sword passed, the void collapsed. Lord Go's scarlet eyes suddenly burst out with anger. What rubbish is this? A sword wants to chop you, Lord Go. Lord Go barked, instantly slapping out a paw. It directly slapped the invisible sword intent, smashing one of the paws. The dog paw continued to descend, crashing into the bronze sword. It caused the bronze sword to tremble. You're not even here yet, and you still want to take Lord Go's dog head? Do you really think Lord Go is a vegetarian? Let me tell you, Lord Go eats sweet and sour ribs. The dog's mouth twitched, Lord Go disdainfully retorting. His figure instantly disappeared, as if he had teleported to the side of the bronze sword. His paw slapped down, crashing onto the bronze sword. Dong! The sword's cry resounded through the void. The rust on the bronze sword seemed to have shaken off a little bit. The rust was extremely heavy. When it fell to the ground, it collapsed. The bronze sword was even bent by Lord Go's paw. In the next instant, with a cracking sound, it was directly slapped away. Simawen coughed out blood, looking at the bronze sword in the void. He recognized that sword. It was the sword of a peerless great sage of their Nether Prison's sword demon clan. That bronze sword had been stained with a lot of the great sage's blood. The sword demon clan is invincible. Simawen laughed. In the void, Lord Go glanced at Simawen. Suddenly, his eyes shrank, and he turned his dog face away. At this moment, Simawen's body also completely froze. His long laughter seemed to be grabbed by his throat, coming to an abrupt stop. Shouting and yelling in my God, Vanishing Mountain, disturbing my rest. I want to see your so-called invincibility. A cold female voice that seemed to be 10,000 years old rang out. Just hearing this voice, it was like feeling the cold wind rustling over. Simawen's eyes were filled with fear. His eyeballs turned, then shrank. On his shoulder, there was a pale, bloodless hand. That hand was slender, with sparkling fingernails. However, in Simawen's eyes, this beautiful hand was like a devil's claw. Trembling, he turned his head. What entered his eyes was a woman, a peerless beauty with a peerless face. Forbidden land, God, Vanishing Mountain, crazy woman. Chapter 1157. The Crazy Woman of God, Vanishing Mountain. Simawen's words were filled with extreme fear, and his voice was trembling. God, Vanishing Mountain was a forbidden land of Earth Prison. In reality, it was a forbidden land that transcended Earth Prison. Nether Prison had forbidden lands, and Earth Prison also had forbidden lands. However, perhaps because the God-vanishing mountain was located in Earth Prison, it caused some Nether Prison experts to look down on this forbidden land. The forbidden lands belonged to the transcendent world and would not interfere in any domain matters. But of course, there were exceptions. Back when Earth Prison's army attacked Nether Prison, when the supreme existences of the 9 clans killed the old Hades Tenzing, the master of the Forbidden Land, the existence of God-vanishing mountain, made his move. Of course, if this crazy woman had not made a move, the 7 supreme beings of the 9 great clans would not have been severely injured at all. At that time, old Hades had also activated the heavenly path of hell to strengthen his body and burst forth with terrifying strength. But the supreme beings of the 9 great clans were almost invincible. He was not afraid of an old Hades Tenzing at all. Even if he wanted to grind this Hades Tenzing to death, he could grind him to death. What a pity! The existence of the Forbidden Land, which had never interfered with the affairs of the realm, had taken action. She was also the only expert from the Forbidden Land who made a move. She was this crazy woman. He was unparalleled in his generation, and his strength was unparalleled. Together with old Hades, he managed to injure the cultivators of the 9 great clans. However, Forbidden Lands naturally had their own rules. The crazy woman's attack broke the rules and was condemned. She was heavily injured and returned to the God-vanishing mountain's Forbidden Land to recuperate. It was also from then on that the experts of Earth Prison and Nether Prison realized the terror of the Forbidden Lands. It turned out that there were experts of this level in the Forbidden Area. Now, this crazy woman had appeared once again. The pale hand patted Simawen's shoulder. The palm was extremely slender, like the palm of a frail young girl. But when he saw that palm, Simawen's entire body began to tremble. Kacha! A layer of ice crystals instantly spread from the soles of Simawen's feet, completely covering his entire body. Simawen let out a miserable howl. "Save me! Help me!" Simawen turned his head and looked at the boundless void with a horrified expression. He reached out with all his might as if he wanted to grab onto something. However, his call did not last long. His entire body was completely sealed in ice. Invincible? What a joke! Who dares claim to be invincible? The ice-cold woman said faintly. She walked out from behind Simawen and tapped his head with her finger. Instantly, the entire ice crystal statue was covered in cracks. Finally, with a cautious sound, it shattered all over the ground, turning into ice crystals that covered the ground. A gust of cold wind blew past. A little saint had fallen just like that. Everyone sucked in a breath of cold air. Bufong's pupils shrank, and the artifact spirits in his mind let out a long howl, causing waves to surge unceasingly. Lord Go turned his head and wagged his tail. He did not even look at the woman. Instead, he stared at the bronze sword that had been sent flying by his claw. As for the 9-tailed fox and 6-tailed fox, they lowered their heads respectfully. This woman was the true ruler of the God-vanishing mountain Forbidden Zone. This woman was barefoot and had a head full of white hair. She was extremely beautiful, and her eyes were light blue. Just by standing there, it was as if she had become one with heaven and earth. The woman's eyes turned, landing on Bufong's body, cold and aloof. This woman was like a piece of ice that would never change, making people's hearts tremble in fear. Bufong exhaled. Being stared at by this woman gave him a lot of pressure. "Your dish is not bad." The woman opened her mouth and said to Bufong. Then, everyone was shocked. The 9-tailed fox's drooping head suddenly rose, looking at Bufong in disbelief. This human was actually a F*King Big Shot? To be able to cook for this existence, wasn't he a big boss? The 6-tailed fox's eyes also flashed with light, remaining silent. Lord Go glanced at Bufong for a while, a little bewildered. Bufong, young man, could cook for this crazy woman? What dish? Sweet and sour ribs? Bufong froze, then came to a realization. So, the supreme existence that had possessed the high priestess was this woman in front of him. Seeing her true form was really a little scary. That woman only gave Bufang a glance, not saying much. The impression that Bufang gave her was that sacrificial dish. Spring wind, summer wound, autumn astringency, and winter's lament. These 4 dishes actually contain the meaning of reincarnation. Although Bufang's strength could not completely release the meaning of reincarnation, compared to the incomplete recipe, these 4 dishes had already helped her a lot. However, compared to the incomplete recipe from before, those 4 dishes had already helped her a lot. Otherwise, she would have had to wait a long time before she could wake up. The woman's gaze turned, landing on Lord Go's body. This familiar earth prison dog, you mangy dog, you still dare to come to my god vanishing mountain? The woman said indifferently. After saying that, Lord Go turned his head. Io, what a coincidence. You're here too. Lord Go gave a dry laugh. The woman did not say anything. Her light blue eyes stared at Lord Go, looking as though the earth prison fire on Lord Go's body was about to be extinguished. God Vanishing Mountain is my territory. Is it strange that I'm here? The woman said. After saying that, her brows instantly furrowed, looking at the sky. There, the bronze sword that Lord Go had sent flying with a claw began to hum unceasingly. The illusionary void trembled. All of a sudden, above the illusionary void, a huge palm appeared. On the God Vanishing Mountain peak, the wind and clouds changed. Huge layers of clouds swept and gathered, turning into a huge hand that covered the sky. This palm was extremely huge, as though it wanted to smash the God Vanishing Mountain with one palm. This palm directly pressed down on the God Vanishing Mountain. A terrifying aura instantly spread. The little Huan Bufang's embrace continuously trembled. Bufang rubbed the latter's head, calming the latter's terrified emotions. The woman clasped her hands, her white robe fluttering. Her feet were bare, and the soles of her feet were incomparably pale. Nether Prison's people, you actually dare to come to my God Vanishing Mountain and act so presumptuously? The woman said. Then, her pale feet tapped the illusionary void. In the next instant, icicles suddenly appeared under her feet. Crack, crack, the icicles constantly appeared and gathered, piling up the woman's body as she continuously flew towards the illusionary void. Lord Go looked at that woman. His Earth Prison Dog mode was also cancelled, turning back into his fat dog form. He knew that since that woman had made her move, he did not need to use his claws. That woman's strength was stronger than his, not weaker. The sky-covering palm slowly slapped down. The woman's figure was piled up by the icicles, charging into the sky. Clasping her hands, no matter how the wind pressed down, the woman's expression did not change. As the woman neared, that huge hand suddenly froze. The rolling clouds had all turned into ice clouds. Cold ice covered it, causing that sky-covering palm to be completely frozen. This woman has a name. People call her Ice Saint. Lord Go grinned as he said, "Women who play with ice are really scary." Bufang nodded. She was pretty scary. She froze a little saint to death because of a disagreement. Now, she did not even raise her hand, but she had frozen the clouds with just the aura spreading out from her body. This woman could be described as peerless. Crack, crack. After the sky-covering palm was frozen, the woman flicked her finger. She tapped it. Then, from the point where she tapped it, dense cracks spread rapidly, covering the entire palm. With a loud bang, the palm crumbled as jagged rocks continuously rained down from the sky. The palm collapsed. Above the sky, a hole was torn. From it, an arm reached out. The palm on the arm turned into a sword finger, which rose. Instantly, the bronze sword seemed to have a spirit. Sword cries rang out unceasingly as it soared into the sky, speeding toward that woman. As the bronze sword was flying, it quickly turned into tens of thousands. Very soon, it turned into a myriad of densely packed sword chi. One after another, burst forth from within. It was as if a domain of strangulation had appeared. The domain of strangulation shrouded the woman as if to strangle her to death. What a clown! You only dare to hide behind and wave your embroidered sword, Ice Saint said indifferently, her voice cold. Then, his light blue eyes flickered with brilliance. She stood on the ice pillar. Her robe flapped noisily. She clasped her hands behind her back. In her mind, countless ice swords emerged. Swoosh! One ice sword after another pierced through the air, heading toward the sword domain. An ice sword destroyed a stream of sword chi. Collisions kept taking place in the sky. Finally, a rumble rang out. The ice pillar under Ice Saint's feet collapsed. The whistling sound of swords approached. Ice Saint's face didn't change. She raised her palm. 2 fingers pinched. She caught the bronze sword that had suddenly broken through. Which? Die! A loud roar broke out in the sky. Then, a beam of light suddenly fell from the sky. It was the will of the great path that belonged to Nether Prison. The bronze sword rumbled. Light bloomed and completely turned into a sword of light. The green and rust covering it fell off in an instant. Boom! The light sword knocked away the woman's fingers and continued forward, stabbing toward the woman's peerless face. However, just as it was about to reach the woman's face, it couldn't go any further. The surface of the woman's body was covered with ice crystals. If I were in my peak state, would you dare to appear in front of me? Ice Saint said indifferently. Then, she slowly raised her hand and pinched the bronze sword of light. He exerted force in his palm, and the bronze light sword was actually bent by his grip. Bufong sucked in a cold breath. Lorgo stuck out his tongue. This woman was still as tough as ever. A miserable scream rang out in the sky. A moment later, with the woman's body as the center, a blizzard immediately appeared, as if it had turned into an ice domain. Almost in the blink of an eye, the woman appeared in the sky. She appeared in front of the arm. She gently tore it. Blood dyed the sky. A miserable scream rang out in the sky. An ice domain? That damned witch. You've recovered your cultivation base. The man with the severed arm screamed in horror. Ice Saint's eyes were indifferent. She raised her hand, and an ice crystal lotus appeared on her palm. The lotus spun and bloomed continuously. She gently waved her hand. The lotus followed the crack on the arm and drilled into it. Boom! A rumble rang out. The man coughed up blood and howled miserably. The crack closed completely. The woman threw the severed arm away in disgust. The severed arm fell straight into the 7-colored pool. It was the arm of a great sage. The life force contained in its flesh was almost endless. The 7-colored pool boiled, and the arm quickly melted in it. It made the color of the pool even more gorgeous. Down below, Bufong was dumbfounded. Wasn't the trick the woman used just now his perishing pot? It looked the same, but she used it in a different way. This woman, she actually imitated his attack. How shameless. Lord Go was also dumbfounded. Swoosh! The storm in the sky dispersed. The snowstorm came and went quickly, disappearing in an instant. Soon, the woman descended from the void, step by step, as if she was stepping on an invisible flight of stairs. She hovered in front of Bufong. Ahem! Bufong boy, since you're fine, Lord Go, I still have a few pieces of sweet and sour ribs left in the Heaven Chief realm. Go back and eat them now. Remember to come back early. Lord Go cleared his throat. Then he twisted his doggy butt. Without saying a word, he tore open the void and was about to step into it. However, just as he took his enchanting cat-like steps, his hair stood on end. The woman had appeared in front of Lord Go. She raised her hand. With a cracking sound, ice crystals gathered and turned into a dagger. The tip of the dagger emitted a cold aura as it pointed at Lord Go. Damn dog, try running again. Ice Saint tilted her head and said expressionlessly. Chapter 1158. Damn dog, why don't you run again? Ice Saint looked at Lord Go with an expressionless face, but there seemed to be a hint of playfulness in her eyes. Lord Go gave a hollow laugh. Bufong and the others watched curiously. Little Who even poked his head out of Bufong's chest, blinking. The 9-tailed fox and the 6-tailed fox had strange expressions on their faces. They should know what was going on. Ice Beauty, revenge breeds revenge. It's troublesome to take revenge. Why don't we forget about it with a smile? Lord Dog opened his mouth, revealing a sincere smile. The fats on his body jiggled. Ice Saint didn't smile at all. Her dagger slowly approached Lord Go, and soon it was at the tip of his nose. The chill covered Lord Go's nose with a layer of frost. You've gone too far. Don't hit a dog in the face. We can't talk like this. Lord Go wrinkled his nose, and the frost immediately fell off. Bufong was getting more and more curious about what Lord Go had done to Ice Saint to make her want to poke countless holes in Lord Go's body. Besides, what happened in those years was all ordered by that old pervert, Tian Song. Lord Go, I was dumbfounded the whole time. Lord Go said righteously. Besides, Tian Song, that old pervert, is dead, Lord Go said. Ice Saint paused, and then her eyes became somewhat complicated. The ice dagger in his hand also slowly melted and disappeared. Forget it. For a moment, Ice Saint seemed to lose interest. Respect the dead. It was that old pervert, Hades, who peeped at you bathing. Not me, Lord Go. Lord Go, I'm a righteous dog. If I hadn't been coerced by that old pervert, how could I have burned your clothes? The Lord Go's hellfire is used to burn powerful enemies. How could it possibly burn clothes? Lord Dog grinned as he rambled on, forcefully explaining the situation to them. Bufong was dumbfounded after hearing that. To think that the Lord Go had such a mighty side to him, burning Ice Saint's clothes. Bufong looked at Ice Saint and could see that her beauty was absolutely breathtaking. She was much more beautiful than the female King Biluo of Goddess City. This kind of beauty went deep into the bone marrow. Ice Saint glanced at Lord Go from the corner of her eyes as a hint of mockery appeared on her beautiful face. Do you think I'll believe that? You burned my clothes and even stole the ice spirit fruit. If it wasn't for Tian Song, I would have frozen you into an ice cube and thrown you into the belly of God Vanishing Mountain to be sealed in ice forever. Ice Saint said. Lord Go nodded hurriedly, the fat on his body jiggling. Sitting on Xiaopi's back, Bufong felt that there was a lot of information. It seemed that it wasn't as simple as burning clothes. After all, with Ice Saint's cultivation base, how could her clothes be burned so easily? There must be a lot of things that people didn't know. The two of them couldn't guess it from just a few words. However, Bufong believed that he would definitely be able to dig it out in the future. There were very few people like him nowadays who were as pure as ice and as clean as jade. Ignoring Lord Go, Ice Saint's eyes turned to Bufong. There seemed to be a strange light flashing in her light blue eyes. All of a sudden, a gust of cold wind blew over. Bufong's eyes shrank. He saw Ice Saint appear in front of him. The latter looked at him, which made Bufong's heart tremble. Ice Saint's lips were pink and tender, and her skin was as white as snow. It seemed that not even her pores could be seen. Her white hair cascaded down and brushed past her cheeks, revealing a hint of gentleness and beauty. The woman's cold face suddenly softened as she looked at Bufong. Bufong was a little surprised. The next moment, Bufong's hair stood on end. Because that woman, he didn't know when she had raised her slender hand and stroked Bufong's cheek. The woman's hand didn't have the slightest warmth. It was like a piece of ice that wouldn't melt for 10,000 years. It made Bufong feel a bone-chilling cold. Ice Saint's fingers touched Bufong's face, then slowly slid down and stroked Bufong's cheek. That nostalgic look in her eyes made Bufong's hair stand on end. Lord Go couldn't help but widen his eyes. What was going on? What happened? Lord Go was dumbfounded. Did this crazy woman fall in love with Bufong? What the F***CK? Was she crazy? This kid doesn't have a face, and he doesn't have a good figure. He's nowhere near as handsome as Lord Dog. So, crazy woman, you'd better take him in. Lord Go's eyes shone brightly. The nine-tailed fox and the six-tailed fox widened their eyes and sucked in breaths of cold air. This human was indeed a big shot. It was definitely a great opportunity for little Hu to follow this human. Bufong's body tensed up, his brows furrowed. He tilted his head slightly and stared at Ice Saint, his face expressionless. Ice Saint was beautiful, But was Bufang the kind of person who only cared about appearances? I really feel the aura of an old friend on you. It's really a nostalgic aura, I Saint said gently. Then, she pinched Bufang's face and began to rub it. Bufang pursed his lips. He wanted to say, "Please pay attention to my cooking talent, not my face. Bufang, don't rely on my face to make a living." But he didn't say it out loud. That was because the woman continued to speak to herself. "My old friend is also a chef like you." I Saint gave Bufang a deep look. "Oh." Bufang was taken aback. The next moment, his pupils constricted. The spirit sea in his body suddenly surged with raging waves. A chef? A familiar aura? Thinking of the restless artifact spirits of the god of cooking sets in his mind, Bufang suddenly had a bold guess. Could it be Bufang swallowed a mouthful of saliva and looked at the woman? Inwardly, he was asking questions. System, come out. What does this crazy woman mean? Could it be that the old friend the crazy woman mentioned was the system's previous host? It was very possible, very possible. But why did the system appear in his body now? And why did it bring him from Earth to this fantasy world? Bufang's cry did not cause the system to appear. Its silence made Bufang's heart feel extremely depressed. Saint continued to rub Bufang's cheek. The cold feeling made Bufang's mind tremble violently. "I know. You and him should both have secrets. You and him should be the same kind of person. No, I am me, the one and only," Bufang said, shaking his head. Saint sighed. Her sad look made Bufang's heart tremble. Every frown and smile of hers was peerless. "I can't be wrong. That man raised me. How could I forget his aura? If you're really the same kind of person as him, I have to remind you." Saint stared at Bufang. "Remind me of what?" Bufang's pupils constricted. Saint stared at Bufang for a long time. Suddenly, she moved her head closer to him. She moved closer to Bufang's ear and breathed into his ear. Those who want to reach the pinnacle are accompanied by disasters. They live and die with a thought. To step through the cycle of reincarnation, one should abandon everything. Only then can one glimpse the god of cooking's path. The woman's voice was not loud. It was as soft as a mosquito's buzz. However, in Bufang's heart, it was like the evening drum and morning bell, ringing ceaselessly and shaking his mind. "What do you mean?" Bufang furrowed his brows as he sensed that something was amiss. Her words were full of helplessness and confusion. She was like a small boat that had lost its way in the middle of the vast sea, not knowing where it was. At the same time, she seemed to be telling her descendants. The fragrance drifted away. After saying that, Saint moved her head away. Her fingers moved down from Bufang's cheek to his chin, and then she withdrew her hand. Her whole person became cold once again. "He said it. I'm just in charge of passing on a message. It's up to you whether you can understand it or not." Saint said, "But you don't have to worry. Your strength is still far from enough. I don't think you'll encounter that man's disaster," Saint said. After that, she reached out a hand and took the little Huli away from Bufang's arms. The little Huli was very obedient. He didn't struggle and just quietly nestled in Saint's arms. Saint gently stroked the little Huli's head with a smile at the corner of her mouth. Suddenly, Saint looked up. Her pale blue eyes stared straight into the distance of God-vanishing mountain. "Have you spied enough? If you don't get lost, don't blame me for making a move," she said indifferently. Saint said indifferently. Her voice was filled with terrifying killing intent. In the distance of God-vanishing mountain, clouds rolled. In an instant, the illusory eyes disappeared one by one. Lord Go narrowed his eyes, looking at the disappearing eyes with a grave expression. "Is it those fellows from the Black Temple and the Cave of the Fallen Gods? In Earth Prison, no one else has the ability to spy on me except them. Although that old fellow Acheron is capable, he's obsessed with planting grass, so it can't be him." Saint was still stroking the little Huli's head. Obviously, she was answering Lord Go's question. At this moment, Bufang was lost in thought, and he was confused. Xiaopi turned into a stream of light and descended. He put Bufong on the ground, then shrank and lay on Bufong's shoulder. Ice Saint also floated down, not disturbing Bufong. Lord Go could see that Bufong had fallen into a strange state. He needed to come out on his own and not be disturbed. The Black Temple and the Cave of the Fallen Gods are beginning to stir. I have a feeling that something big is about to happen in Earth Prison. Lord Go twitched his mouth. Ice Saint glanced at Lord Go and didn't say anything. The Black Temple and the Cave of the Fallen Gods were the other two forbidden lands of Earth Prison. Compared with God Vanishing Mountain, they were more terrible, dangerous, and cruel, and the experts lurking in them were also very terrible. It could be said that supreme existences lurked in the forbidden lands of both Earth Prison and Nether Prison. If the experts of the forbidden lands could attack at will, neither Earth Prison nor Nether Prison could stop them. The forbidden lands had restrictions. When she left the forbidden lands without permission, she was severely wounded. It was the same in the other forbidden lands, and those experts could not leave. However, the restrictions could not last forever. The experts in the forbidden lands had extremely long lives. They were immortal if one day the restrictions of the forbidden lands were gone. The whole netherworld might be stirred up by a storm of blood. Not every supreme existence in the forbidden lands was as good-tempered as Ice Saint. The nine-tailed fox and the six-tailed fox's injuries were slowly recovering. Having been bathed in the spring of life, their vitality was naturally very strong, and these injuries would soon recover. Since Ice Saint had made them stay, Lord Go would not leave. Lying not far from the spring of life, he slept soundly. Bufong, on the other hand, sat cross-legged on a rock, frowning and lost in thought. No one knew what he was thinking about. Ice Saint sat dignified in the ice coffin, holding little Hu in her arms and stroking him gently. Her eyes were soft. The nine-tailed fox lay in the distance, flicking its 9 tails from time to time. The six-tailed fox went back into the 7-colored pool and remained motionless. The atmosphere suddenly became stagnant. This went on for about 3 days. Bufong, who was sitting cross-legged, slowly opened his eyes. There was a flash of clarity in his eyes. As he opened his eyes, the aura on his body began to undergo an earth-shattering change, rising in a straight line. In the blink of an eye, he had reached the 9-star, true, immortal realm. The system's serious voice rang in his head. Congratulations to the host for completing the stipulated sales task and taking another solid step toward the goal of becoming the god of cooking. You're tuning into the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.